I tasted blood before I even realized I was alive. The windshield was shattered, jagged cracks spiderwebbing across the glass. My fingers, slick and trembling, slipped against the steering wheel. Sirens howled somewhere in the distance, their wails stretching through the night like wolves scenting blood. Someone was screaming, high, raw, desperate. Maybe it was me. Light strobed through my hazy vision, flashing red and blue, and I found myself upside down, my body suspended, the seatbelt digging into my shoulder like a noose. Fitting. All my life I've been a screw-up. That's not an exaggeration. It's not self-pity. It's just fact. Like my crazy mother used to say, if there's a wrong turn to take, you'll take it twice just to make sure it's the worst one. And she wasn't wrong, but she wasn't always right either. I grew up in a rough Chicago neighborhood, raised by a single mother who broke her back working 2 jobs just to keep me in tennis. I was a prodigy, the prodigy. A reckless, arrogant punk who played like a god, but lived like a ghost, always chasing the next high, the next thrill, the next beautiful mistake. Julian Belmont was all that and more. Angel dust and beautiful men were my downfall. Until tonight. Until I wrapped my car around a tree and realized I wasn't untouchable. That the lies I told myself about my control, my choices, my future, were exactly that. Lies. Lie to someone long enough and eventually, they believe it. That's the whole point of this, right? The cameras, the headlines, the perfect romance, packaged and sold. A relationship built for damage control, for the sponsors, for the illusion of stability. Only somewhere along the way the act became real. The lines blurred. And now, when he looks at me with those sharp, knowing eyes, I can't tell if he's playing the game or if I am. Because if I've learned anything, it's this. You don't fake a feeling without it faking you right back. I coughed, choking on the thick, coppery tang of blood. My ribs ached, my lungs felt too small, like I was suffocating on the weight of my own mistakes. The seatbelt cut into my skin, keeping me tethered, holding me together when everything else was unraveling. The sirens grew louder, flashing lights bleeding into the wreckage. My vision blurred, tunneling, darkness licking at the edges. The screaming had stopped, or maybe I just couldn't hear it anymore. Glass crunched outside, voices, urgent, distant. Got a pulse, he's still breathing. A shadow moved across the broken windshield. Hands clawed at the door, metal groaning as they wrenched it open. I tried to move, tried to speak, but my body was a weightless thing, drifting in the thick, numbing fog of shock. Sir, can you hear me? A hand pressed against my throat, searching for a pulse. The seatbelt unlatched. Suddenly I was falling, weightless. Hands caught me, steady but cold, easing me onto something solid. I wanted to tell them I was trying, but my mouth wouldn't work. The world stretched, the light smearing into something distant and unreal. My eyelids fluttered, too heavy to hold open. And just before everything went black, one final thought seared through the haze, sharp, bitter, unrelenting. Faking it is what got me here. Faking a relationship with him is what destroyed me. Chapter 1. Carter. I smashed my racket onto the ground until it cracked, pounding it against the court over and over again, the sound drowned out by the referee's shrill whistle and the murmurs of the crowd. The taste of blood clawed up my throat, thick and metallic, burning as the smug bastard across the net kept smiling. He was always smiling. I wanted to rip that grin off his face. "Carter!" my coach shouted, but I barely registered him. I tossed the racket aside, narrowly missing the referee, who glared at me like I was the devil incarnate. God damn it. "I'm fine. I'm good," I growled, though I knew I wasn't. Sweat stung my eyes as I paced, hands on my hips, chest heaving with every breath. The score was tied. Deuce. We were in a battle for the set, and I couldn't stand it. My grip on the handle was tight enough to snap it in half as I stared across at Julian Belmont, my rival. The air felt like an elastic band, stretched thin, one wrong move away from snapping, and every fiber of my being screamed to finish this. But he just stood there, smug as ever, waiting for me to slip up. Julian stood across the court, hair tousled by the wind, his grin maddeningly calm. His green eyes locked on mine, the weight of his gaze pushing me back. Everything about him was effortless, precise, controlled. I was the opposite. Slow, disjointed. The ball shot at me too fast. My racket barely connected, sending it flying over the net. Julian didn't even break a sweat as he returned it. Every movement clean and fluid. 15 love. My lungs burned, each breath a struggle. Sweat stung my eyes, but I couldn't wipe it away. The world felt heavy, fuzzy. My legs shook beneath me. I was still drunk from last night, and the taste of whiskey clung to the back of my throat, thick and bitter. The ground under my feet seemed to shift, the air too thick to breathe. Julian's serve came again, slicing through the air like it had a purpose, one I couldn't reach. My body moved too slow, the ball whizzing past me before I could react. 30 love. I wiped the sweat off my face with the back of my hand. My heart hammered in my chest, so loud I could hear it in my ears. My head felt light, my vision blurring. This was it, my last chance. If I didn't win, I was done. This was everything, and I was falling apart. Julian served again. His racket sliced the air and the ball came at me, a blur of motion. I swung, my feet slid on the court. I barely caught the ball, sending it back, but he was already there. His return hit the far corner, forcing me to sprint, my legs burning, muscles screaming. 30-15. I could barely breathe. The taste of blood now coppery and sharp. My chest was on fire, lungs tight, like they couldn't hold enough air. The ball came again, fast, demanding. I barely managed to get a racket on it, my body already too tired. Julian moved in, graceful, unstoppable. 40-15. My legs felt like jelly, shaky and weak. My heart pounded in my ears, and the rest of the world faded away. There was nothing but him, his perfect form, and my failure written in every stroke. He served again. The ball shot past me, a final blow. Game, Julian Belmont. The words were a slap, cold and final. My chest tightened, the air sucked out of me. I looked to the stands. Trina's head was down, her shoulders slumped. I couldn't do this, I couldn't win. Julian walked over, cool as ever. Good match, he said. His voice felt like ice. I didn't answer, couldn't answer. My body was too numb to move. The court, the crowd, all of it faded away. It was over. Trina didn't look at me, which would have been worse if she had, but her heels clicked on the floor as she led me back to the locker room. Shower and change, we can talk later. Then she was gone. I scrubbed my skin until it was raw, hating myself for my failure. The water pounded against my back as I braced my hands against the tile wall. Julian, goddamn Julian. I curled my blunt fingernails, wanting to dig into the wall. He'd won. God damn it. I punched the tile wall. Pain exploded up my knuckles, all the way into my wrists, juddering through my entire arm. My nostrils flared. The pain was excruciating, but I felt none of it. This had been my last chance. I was a washed-up tennis player walking the cliff's edge. I had once been on top, winning 17 singles titles, including 4 Grand Slam championships. But one too many run-ins with the law, the endless nights fueled by alcohol, and the inevitable consequences that followed had pulled me under. The game that used to be my escape had turned into something I couldn't outrun anymore. My ranking had slipped, and so had my focus. I had lost the drive, the discipline. Julian, on the other hand, had never wavered, clean, sharp, and always at the top. He was everything I used to be, and everything I'd thrown away. Losing this match at the Sands Open meant I was one step closer to being forgotten. One more slip, and I'd be off the radar for good. I thought about calling my sponsor Billy, but I ignored it. What would I say? How could I face him after all the chances he'd given me? After everything I'd ruined? I stepped out of the shower, bandaged my hand, and dressed in loose black shorts, workout leggings, and a tight muscle shirt. My brown hair flopped over my brow, damp and heavy. I met Coach in the hallway. He didn't say anything at first, just studied me with that cold, practiced look. I knew what he was thinking. "You fought well," he finally said, but his words felt empty. "But fighting alone doesn't win matches. You've got to show up, Carter. You have to show up." I nodded, but the weight of it all crushed me. My lungs burned, my mind foggy from the years of drinking and self-destructive behavior. What was there to say to that? I was a mess. We headed to the office room. I avoided the paparazzi, pulling my hoodie over my head as security led the way to the private offices. The second we got inside, I froze. Julian was standing there in all his regal glory. God, the guy was a prick. He wore sweatpants that hung low on his hips, a clean white shirt, and I could smell his Ralph Lauren polo red cologne from here. Dickwad. What was worse was his agent was there too. Glenda, blonde hair, blue eyes, massive pumps that made her look a lot taller than her 5'0" height. She wore white too. To match, of course. They were too pretentious. "What's he doing here?" I asked Trina. "Come to gloat?" Julian smiled ruefully. Something like that. My jaw worked. Even how he spoke irked me. So posh and British. Like I said before. Prick. "Have a seat, Carter." Trina eyed me, and if I wasn't so scared of her rage, I would have defied her. But judging by her expression, her mouth pulled into a thin line, her bronze skin shining with sweat, and her thick purple glasses perched on her tall nose, I realized she meant business. I sat. "Thank you all for being here," Trina continued. "Now, what's all this about?" "Right." Glenda stepped forward, her heels clicking sharply on the floor. "See, we're in a bit of a bind here. A tiff, if you will. Everybody knows Julian's a rising star. 6 Grand Slam titles. 3 ATP Masters 1000 wins. He's been ranked number 1. One for over a year now. His sponsorships are through the roof. Every major brand wants him, from Nike to Rolex. He's the face of the sport. And you? Well, you've got a history, Carter." She paused, letting the silence hang between us. "But let's just say your rankings have been slipping. No titles for 2 years. And that reputation? You've been written off by most of the media." Julian had everything I didn't. What else was new? "So?" I snapped at her. "Please get to the point," Trina said, massaging her temple. Glenda and Julian shared a look. "We've got a problem," Glenda said. And I noticed while she spoke, Julian went to look out the window, his hands shoved deep into his pockets, stretching his gray sweats over his firm ass. Heat clawed up my face and I looked away. "See? There was a mix-up with his visa papers. We filed the wrong ones, and Julian is, well, getting deported." Silence settled in the room, and I burst out laughing. I laughed so hard and for so long everyone was staring at me. "You? Deported? This is rich," I howled. "So this is cause for celebration." "Be quiet," Trina hissed at me. "Well, I'm sorry to hear that. If there's anything I can do, let me know, but I fail to see how that has anything to do with my client." "I was getting to that," Glenda cleared her throat. "The thing is that Carter is one of the few openly gay tennis players, and so is Julian. I've pitched it with the legal department, and they have no issues about it, as long as the visa issue isn't exactly public, but I think we can make it work, make it believable." "Wait," Trina held up her hand. "What are you saying? You want Carter to what? Fake marry Julian so he can stay in the country?" Glenda's silence spoke volumes. "No. Hell no, 1,000,000 times no," I said petulantly, crossing my arms over my chest. "We thought you might say that." Glenda's smile turned wicked. "Mr. Belmont is offering you a chance at rebranding, to reinvent yourself. By going to prison, I don't think so. Fake relationships happen all the time. Think Henry Cavill and Kaylee Cuoco." "Allegedly," Trina cut in. "Julian's image is spotless. Carter is a dirty, wet rag." Glenda went on, her voice dripping with thinly veiled disgust. "We don't have time to be picky. We've drawn up the fake relationship contract. Nothing will happen without consent. You guys will live together, play together, create the perfect image, have a small wedding, and when it's done, you can crawl back into the gutter." "I have no idea how attractive you're making this," I muttered. Glenda ignored me, pulling out a tablet and swiping through it. "The deal's simple. We'll set up joint social media accounts, go to a couple of public events, and, oh yes, make sure the wedding photos look believable. We'll be lovey-dovey for the cameras. If it works out, Julian's career stays intact, and your career gets a little facelift. And let's be clear," she smirked, "you'll follow the PR guidelines. No getting too handsy in public, no breaking up on social media unless we dictate it, and absolutely no mess-ups in interviews. Keep the good couple persona at all costs." "Yeah, like I'm going to be a model husband," I shot back. Glenda's expression didn't change. "If you refuse, I'll make sure everyone hears about your 6 months in rehab, Carter. Maybe a nice headline about your struggle with sobriety. I'm sure the sponsors would love that, not to mention the tabloids would eat it up. A recovering mess? Or a shining knight in an apparent perfect relationship? Your call." I stiffened. That was a low blow. Trina leaned forward, rubbing her temples like she had a headache she couldn't shake. "You really think this is a good idea?" she muttered, more to herself than anyone else. "Fake marriages don't exactly have the best reputation, and Carter's not exactly known for being obedient. You sure you want to go this route, Julian?" Julian, who had been silent this whole time, finally turned to face us. He gave me a quick glance, but his expression was unreadable. "It's either this or I get kicked out of the country. And Carter, you need this. I'm just offering you a way back." I clenched my fists, heat rushing to my face. This wasn't about me. It was about him. About Julian Belmont, the golden boy, the one who had everything. And I was just supposed to help him keep it. Glenda cleared her throat, breaking the silence. "So, what's it going to be, Carter?" "Well, that was colorful," Trina sighed as she sank back into her chair. "I don't think it was necessary to say all that, though." "They deserved it," I shrugged, flexing my hand and wincing as pain stabbed up my arm. "It doesn't matter. Julian can beg someone else on his knees while he's at it." Trina eyed me over the rim of her butterfly wing glasses. "This isn't a joke, Carter. I think it would be a good opportunity." I scoffed. "To be Julian Belmont's pet? Yes, master, no way." "Or to learn from him," Trina said. "They're willing to pay for your rehab, clear any outstanding debts, and provide private lessons." My breath caught. Glenda didn't mention all of that. Private lessons from Julian. It was too enticing, not because I thought the prick was better than me, but if I could figure out how he... No, I can't go there. The answer was no. I want to avoid federal prison in this lifetime. "The contract is airtight," Trina said. "There's even a clause that says you can claim you were coerced into it." I swallowed, considering it. "Let me think about it." Trina shrugged, leaning back in her chair. "By the way, you're fired." "What?" I stood glaring at her. "What the hell, Trina?" "You knew this was coming, Carter," she said blankly. "Your play has been crap. You're drunk or high or both. I don't even know anymore or how the hell you keep passing the drugs tests. All the sponsors have dropped you. You're going viral for your tantrums and not for your games. Enough is enough." "Screw you," I hissed, throwing my bag over my shoulder. Trina smiled thinly. "Yes, screw me, for thinking I could turn some no-name kid from Chicago into something." Her words lanced at my heart, but I stormed out the door and slammed it shut. I stomped across the parking lot, my boots pounding on the cracked pavement. All the cars were gone. Figures. I made my way to my red, barely hanging on Beamer, the one with the faded paint and a dent that had been there for God knows how long. I was just about to toss my duffel bag into the passenger seat when I froze. Crap. There he was, Julian, leaning against my car door like he owned the damn lot. I whispered a curse under my breath, then hiked the bag higher on my shoulder and walked over to him. "What do you want?" I asked, trying to sound like I wasn't about to explode. "A truce." "No deal." Julian tilted his head, his blonde hair fluttering in the wind like some cheesy cologne ad. Are you this petty, or am I just lucky? I'm always this petty, I snapped, sidestepping him, almost shoving him out of the way as I reached for the car door. Look, I need this. I don't give a crap about what you need. Carter, Julian said, his voice softer now. Please. I know we've had our differences. I never meant to hurt you. Back then. My nostrils flared at the mention of the past. Our past. There were so many reasons I hated Julian, but the main one? He was the guy I'd looked up to when I was coming up in the tennis world. He'd taken me into his mentorship program. I was so excited, so damn happy. Then one night I overheard him laughing with his buddies, mocking me. My clothes were raggedy. My rackets were old. My shoes scuffed. My mom and I had been on welfare for years. He didn't know she'd spent every penny she had to get me to that competition. Every damn penny. And here he was, laughing at me. At us. That gut punch had stuck with me ever since. I smirked at him. Have fun getting deported. Maybe you can find a homeless guy to suck off at the side of the road. Maybe he'll marry you. Carter, he said, grabbing my bicep. Please. I stared into the deep green pools of his eyes, and for a second, I saw it. Desperation, anguish, and a whole lot of leverage. He needed me. I was the only one who could make this ridiculous PR stunt believable. I was the only one who could save him. Fine, but I want a rematch. Julian looked confused. What do you mean? Before we divorce, I want a final rematch. Have your team put everything together. If I win, we divorce, and you get to stay in the country. His eyes flashed with heat. And if I win? If you win, I expose you for the lying piece of crap that you are and you get deported, I grinned. Deal. We shook hands and I ignored the spark of heat that shot up my palm, pretending it was nothing. But, I added, you have to make it believable. We do this for 6 months to a year, and when it's over, we'll see who comes out on top. Winner takes all? Julian smirked. Winner takes all. And just like that, now I had the upper hand. I'd go through with the stupid fake wedding, learn all of Julian Belmont's tricks, and when it was time to strike, Julian wouldn't know what hit him.
Chapter 2. Julian. It was the stupidest decision I'd ever made in my life. Carter was clearly high out of his freaking mind. I half expected him to start debating philosophy with a lamppost. Worse, I couldn't even tell if he was seeing double or just performing an interpretive dance of man barely standing. Whatever. As he sped down the street, I watched his Beamer peel out of the parking lot, the tyres screeching on the asphalt. His total disregard for anyone and anything astounded me. So, Glenda asked me. We're screwed, I muttered, striding past her and towards my own black Mercedes-Benz. Come on, she hurried after me. It can't be that bad. He threatened to deport me if I don't win against him in a final match. It's that bad. I sighed, tilting my head up to the heavens. Was it pouring yet? Jesus. Glenda's warm hand touched my lower back. Don't worry, he'll do it. Trust me. And once it's over, we can figure out our next plan. How? I asked. All these legal papers just to avoid federal prison, but it's leaving too much of a paper trail. Everything will be sealed, trust me, Glenda assured me, and I trusted her with my life. Just please go home and I'll take care of everything else. The mistake on the visa application was an oversight. You won't get deported, you'll just have to work on making your relationship with Carter believable. Believable, I snorted. I'd have better luck convincing a potted plant to file my taxes. Carter was a walking train wreck, and worst, he was probably the most attractive jackass I had ever seen. Thick brown curly hair, tattoos a lip ring that just begged to be kissed, and ink covered each of his arms like sleeves. If his attitude wasn't so bad, I would have had him bent over my car the first time I met him. But Carter was a different breed entirely. He was so rude that he could make a nun throw hands. Hell, if bad attitudes were an Olympic sport, he'd have a gold medal and flip me off on the podium. Most guys thought it was an act, like he was trying to be tennis's answer to McEnroe, minus the talent plus a drinking problem. But Carter wasn't faking it. He was the real deal, a walking, talking code violation. If there was a rule about racket abuse, unsportsmanlike conduct, or swearing in 5 different languages, he'd broken it. McEnroe had his meltdowns, Kyrgios thrived on chaos, and Nastase was practically a professional menace. But Carter was in a league of his own. Things wouldn't be so bad if I wasn't about to be forced to be married to him. See, the truth was Carter is a problem I can't stop looking at. Running a hand through my hair, I shrugged again and forced a smile. It'll be all right, I promise. She kissed my cheeks. Okay, go home and tidy up. The wedding will be tomorrow at City Hall. Trina has assured me that Carter will arrive at 12 p.m. sharp. I nodded and hugged her back. Okay, thanks again. You saved my life. She smiled. Always. Then she was gone. I stood there for a long moment, leaning against my car. I placed a hand over my heart, my eyes slipping closed as I listened to the soothing thump. It echoed in my ears, vibrating through me. My large thumb traced the ridged surgical line through my shirt. I opened my eyes and headed to my car. The drive back to my penthouse was uneventful, though my mind churned as I pulled into the underground parking lot. The building, sleek and modern, loomed over the city, just another glass fortress for the rich and morally flexible. My place was on the top floor, a multi-million-dollar penthouse with floor-to-ceiling windows, an obscene amount of space for a guy who only ever occupied one side of the couch, and a view that made people gasp when they walked in. Not that I cared about any of that tonight. The second I stepped inside, I peeled off my blazer and tossed it onto a chair before heading straight to the bathroom. A hot shower was non-negotiable. I cranked up the water and let it scald my skin, washing away the tension from the day. By the time I stepped out, toweling my hair dry, I felt slightly more human. I threw on a pair of sweats, poured myself a glass of wine, and let the mellow hum of light rock music fill the space. ESPN played quietly in the background, rerunning highlights of the latest matches. I half listened as I stretched, lifted a few weights and tried, unsuccessfully, to shake off the fact that I was getting married in less than 24 hours. My phone buzzed on the counter. I glanced at it and saw Eric's name flashing across the screen. "Jules, you dick!" Eric's voice boomed through the speaker the second I played the message. "Come out with us tonight. We're going to Fairy Town, a place you'll absolutely love. Please, for me, your best and dearest friend." "Call me." I chuckled, shaking my head. Eric was a nut. I called him back, pressing the phone between my ear and shoulder as I poured another glass of wine. "Hey." "Jules," Eric shouted over a wave of music and voices. "I was at your game and I heard you killed it against the monster." He laughed at his own horrible joke. "No, seriously, you need to come out and celebrate tonight." "I can't, but some other time, I swear." I chewed on my bottom lip. "Look, we need to talk." "What was that, love?" Eric shouted. "Oh, I can't hear you. This place is divine, and the men are absolutely sinful." "Oh, do say you'll come out. They love your British voice." "Eric," I said firmly, "I need to talk to you about something." "Okay, let me go outside." He disappeared for a second, doors opening and closing, muffled voices fading. When he spoke again, it was quieter. "You sound so serious. What is it? Did you win Roland Garros by default?" "No, actually." I stared at my drink, swirling the liquid as I braced myself. "I've been seeing someone." Silence. This would hurt him, but I needed to continue. "It's serious." "Oh," Eric replied. "How serious?" Like, I'm getting married tomorrow. Serious." Eric burst out laughing. "Are you freaking kidding me?" he asked, but there was a thin layer of hysteria beneath the humour. "Jesus, you're getting married, and you didn't even think to tell your best friend?" "I'm sorry. It all happened really fast, but I love him." "You love him?" Eric scoffed. "This imaginary guy who I didn't know existed until 5 seconds ago." "Yeah," I said, the word tasting like ash. I love him, and we're serious. Well, good luck with that. Do I get to meet him? Or am I just supposed to pretend your imaginary husband is real, like Santa Claus or Novak Djokovic's humility? I sighed. Eric. No, seriously, should I be expecting a wedding invite? Or is this one of those top-secret classified marriages where I just find out through a blurry paparazzi photo of you looking miserable on a beach somewhere? I pinched the bridge of my nose. It's complicated. Oh, no doubt, Eric snorted. Blink twice if this is a hostage situation. I groaned, already regretting this conversation. Eric sighed dramatically. Fine, but if he's ugly, I'm disowning you. Noted. So, who is he? Carter Hawke. Eric went quiet again, and I broke out into a cold sweat. It was no secret that Carter absolutely hated me, and it was worse when my friends got involved. Back in the day, Carter was a junior, and I worked closely with him when he was first starting out as his mentor. Things inevitably went sour between us, and since then the guy has hated me. But he treated most of my friends like hot trash too. I see. Eric, look, I've got to go. People to see, things to do. You understand, right, Julian? Crap. He was furious. I'm sorry, I meant to tell you. No, don't worry about it. I'm just your best friend for the past 4 years. Nobody important. I need you at the wedding. Eric said nothing. My stomach knotted, and I hated springing things on him. I hated the entire situation, but it was the only thing I could do. Please. Fine, text me the details. He hung up. I sighed, slumping against the wall. Tossing my phone on the coffee table, I sat down on the couch, running a hand through my blonde hair. What a mess. I pressed a hand to my sternum and went to the medicine cabinet to get my medication. I swallowed the jagged pills, choking back some water. I stared at myself in the full-length mirror. Then I lifted my shirt to expose the long gash down my chest. Hypertrophic cardiomyopathy was what the doctors called it when they told me my heart was becoming too thick and I needed a transplant. After 5 years in the finest American doctors, I was able to get a brand new heart. But the aftercare, the countless checkups, the endless tests and the medications were a constant reminder that this wasn't a one-time fix. Regular cardiology visits, an intense regimen of daily meds, and even more frequent appointments since I was still playing competitive sports. All of it kept me on edge. I couldn't skip a dose, couldn't slack on my doctor visits. The stress of it, the weight of being told I might not make it past 30 if I didn't follow the plan to the letter, was always there lurking. But I couldn't show it. I had to keep my act together. It was either I get married to Carter or lose all my doctors and health specialists that had been with me through the years. No Carter, no heart transplant team, no top-tier cardiologist to make sure my new heart stayed in perfect working order. I'd been through too much to just throw it all away. But this was the kind of decision I never thought I'd have to make. And yet here I was, making it. I glanced at the clock. I'd need to prepare, mentally and physically, for tomorrow's wedding. I wasn't sure if I was ready for what was coming, but I didn't have a choice. Crap, I cursed under my breath when I arrived at the courthouse, and Carter was leaning against the building outside City Hall, smoking a cigarette in a pair of high-top Steve Madden combat boots, a black suit jacket, a loosened sheep button-up, and black slacks. He looked like he was about to rave, not attend his wedding. I gritted my teeth, approaching him in my crisp navy blue suit. Carter cocked his head at me, blowing smoke in my face. What the hell are you wearing? Hello to you too, love, he said, mocking my British voice. I ignored him. Look, if you aren't going to take this seriously... I bet on it, he snorted. Of course I'm taking it seriously. Whatever, I don't have time for this. I stormed past him and went inside, where Glenda and Trina were waiting for us. I plastered on a fake smile and kissed Glenda's cheek, hugging Trina. Thank you for doing this. It'll be fine, Glenda said. The media will be here in 20 minutes. Just remember to act like you're head over heels. And love, please try not to punch him before then. I make no promises, I muttered. Carter eventually came back, smelling like smoke and cheap cologne. Are we doing this or not? I've got stuff to do. Sounds like husband material, a voice said behind him. I whirled around to see Eric standing there, side-eyeing Carter through narrowed eyes. I could have cried in relief. Eric, thank God, I breathed, hugging him tightly. Eric hugged me back, but I noticed his arms were stiff and he ended it briefly. My heart tightened, and I hated that I couldn't share this with him, but I didn't want him involved in this. If it was ever found out we were doing this for a green card, he could go to jail. Thank you for coming. Eric was hard to miss, towering over most people, with his sharp Asian features. His hair was dark and styled just right, the kind of messy perfect that always made you wonder how much effort went into it. That day, he was rocking a forest green tux. What are best friends for? Eric smiled tightly. Congratulations. Forest green. Carter rolled his eyes and I wanted the ground to swallow me whole. Thanks. Carter Hawk and Julian Belmont? A voice called. The ceremony felt like it was dragging on forever. I was trying to stay calm, but everything about this moment was just off. Carter stood there like a mannequin in his suit, looking about as thrilled as a guy getting a root canal. Finally, we reached the part where we had to exchange rings. I fumbled nervously with the small velvet box I'd been clutching for the entire ceremony. It felt like I was about to drop a bomb in front of everyone. I opened it, and the two simple golden bands gleamed under the fluorescent light, mocking me. I could barely remember picking them out. The ring fit too perfectly. A small, traitorous part of me thought that it was just another piece of this whole messed up situation falling into place. This was happening, and there was nothing I could do about it. All right then, the officiant said, a little too chipper for my taste. You may kiss the groom. Carter's whole body went rigid, like he was trying to teleport out of there. It wasn't until I leaned in that I realised how awkward it was going to be. Carter, in his infinite wisdom, tilted his head to the left and I, with zero coordination, went right. The resulting collision was less romantic and more like two cars crashing at low speed. Our noses smacked together with a sound that was embarrassingly loud in the otherwise quiet room. Ow, I muttered, rubbing my nose, looking up at him. He was blinking in confusion, probably trying to figure out if he'd just kissed me or my face had decided to fight back. Smooth, Carter said. I winced. I was going for a kiss, but apparently my face has other ideas. Without giving me a chance to recover, he leaned in again, this time with less enthusiasm, and I braced myself for another awkward attempt. His lips brushed against mine, dry and slightly chapped, and I instantly regretted the decision to engage in this ridiculous charade. He tasted like ash, which wasn't exactly the romantic kiss I had imagined, but there was a faint coolness from his lip ring that gave me pause. It pressed against my skin, sending a strange jolt through me. What the hell? It wasn't supposed to feel like that. But it did. A spark of something. Attraction. God, I was actually feeling something. The click of a camera took me out of the kiss, and I saw Glenda and Trina snapping pictures. I pulled back almost immediately, clearing my throat as I fought to regain my composure. Carter, as usual, had zero reaction. His expression remained as blank as a piece of cardboard, though his eyes flickered with something unreadable. All right then, the officiant said, clearly not fazed by the disaster of a kiss. Congratulations, Mr. Belmont and Mr. Hawk. I pulled back almost immediately, clearing my throat as I fought to regain my composure. Carter, as usual, had zero reaction. His expression remained as blank as a piece of cardboard, though his eyes flickered with something unreadable. All right then, the officiant said, clearly not fazed by the disaster of a kiss. Congratulations, Mr. Belmont and Mr. Hawk. We walked out of the courthouse together. I was startled as Carter's hand slipped between mine, intertwining our fingers. His hand was large and calloused, and my face grew hotter as the paparazzi came snapping pictures of us, blinding me. We were headed by our bodyguards into a black van. An awkward silence filled the car as Carter stared out the window, ignoring everyone and everything, while Eric did the same. I sat between the two of them, not sure what to say, while Glenda and Trina clicked away on their phones. "Riveting," Eric muttered. "I can see you have an epic romance." I felt a smile tug at my lips as a soft chuckle escaped before I could stop it, but slammed my mouth shut until we reached the venue. Dinner was agony. Eric sat in stony silence, and Carter ate like a dog. I was sweating through my suit and didn't have much to say. Once it was over, Eric excused himself and I walked with him outside. "So that was interesting." "Yeah, sorry I was so nervous." "How long have you been dating again?" I swallowed. A few months." "Huh, I thought you said a year." "Curious." His eyes narrowed and my stomach tightened. "Okay, well, enjoy the marriage consummation, that part is usually the best." He winked and hugged me. I let out a short, breathy laugh, rubbing the back of my neck as my gaze darted around the room. I hugged him back. "I'm sorry." "It's fine, we'll talk later, okay?" Eric walked away before I could respond, and I knew he'd still be angry with me for a while, but at least we were getting somewhere. "Can we go?" Carter said behind me, picking at his nails. "Yeah, let's go." They took Carter back to City Hall, and he drove his car to my penthouse. Glenda and Trina headed home, giving us some space. Glenda told me she got some great pictures and would have them framed for me later. I led Carter inside, my heart pounding. I never imagined I'd be in this situation, having him in my home, this stranger pretending to be my husband. The whole thing felt surreal, like some kind of twisted game I didn't know how to play. How were we supposed to pretend to be married? To live together, under the same roof when we barely knew each other? Carter didn't seem fazed. It was like he couldn't care less about being here. His indifference was almost suffocating, and it made me feel smaller, like I didn't belong in my own space anymore. I led him to the guest bedroom and lingered in the doorway. The guest bedroom was simple, with soft beige walls and a queen-sized bed draped in a white duvet. A large window let in the evening light. Carter dropped his bag onto the hardwood floor, his eyes scanning the space. He picked up the lamp on the nightstand, testing its weight before setting it back down. Then, with a slight grin, he bounced on the bed, testing its softness. He looked at me, eyebrows raised, waiting for my reaction as if daring me to say something. The silence stretched between us, thick and awkward. I felt out of place in my own home, unsure of how to even act. This was supposed to be our life now. Pretend or not, it felt like everything was just wrong. I cleared my throat. "Well, I'll let you get settled." My eyes landed on the duffel bag. "I have practice tomorrow. You're welcome to join." "I'll be there," Carter clipped, then stared at me. "What? Do you want a free show?" "Good night." "Yeah, right. Good night." I closed the door and released a breath I didn't realise I was holding. What a day! And things were only just getting started, but only just getting started.
Chapter 3. Carter. I was used to lying, used to fabrications and half-truths. I was used to giving without speaking up. But this was different. Not just because I could go to prison for faking a relationship, but because Julian was different. I had worshipped the ground he walked on ever since he became my mentor. But after he ridiculed me in front of his friends, my hero worship turned into blinding hatred. I needed to win. I had to beat him, and I was willing to do whatever it took. I woke up to light streaming through my window, not the blaring sounds of horns or people shouting in the hallways. The sheets were plush, far too soft for someone like me, who was used to sleeping in my car or behind dumpsters. I yawned and stretched my arms above my head before checking the time. Just after 4. That meant I had a few minutes to shower and change before we headed out to practice. The bathroom was bigger than my entire living room, which only made me hate Julian even more as I showered and got ready to start the day. I dressed in a black shirt and red shorts, and I was just pulling my hoodie over my head when Knuckles rapped against the door. "Yeah? Ready?" Just about. Jerk, I added mentally. My phone chimed and I made the mistake of checking. The rent's due. When are you dropping off the money? The text message read, Mother. Right. I'd totally forgotten about her and her junkie boyfriend, who I ended up supporting by dropping off money to them once or twice every month. I'll stop by next week, I texted back, which was a bald-faced lie since I had no money to speak of after losing the competition to Julian a few days ago. I was strapped for cash right now, so she'd just have to wait. I hurried to grab my stuff, and together we headed out the door. A few bodyguards were waiting for us at the elevator, and we walked in silence to the private tennis court outside the building. We started the rally, the ball slamming back and forth. Julian moved effortlessly, like he'd been holding a racket since birth. I was chasing, swinging harder to keep up. But every shot I hit felt raw, untamed. I dug my heels in, pushing hard. A sharp backhand flew across the court. Julian barely got his racket to it, sending it back to me fast. I had to bend low to meet it, barely making the shot. You're leaning too much on your forehands, not using your legs. You're relying on your arms. I bit back a growl. His words stung, but damn it, he knew what he was talking about. Fine, I said through clenched teeth. Show me. He demonstrated, feet set, racket angle, everything in perfect sync. It was like watching a master. Reluctantly, I followed. My next shot was cleaner, sharper. Julian's eyes flickered, just for a second, like I'd earned a bit of respect. Better, he said. Let's see if you can keep it up. We were back at it, the game faster now. The ball zipped between us, each strike harder, sharper. The crack of the racket, the rush of air, it was electric. Julian was moving quicker, his smirk still there. But there was something else in his eyes. He was pushing me, and I was pushing back. I found my rhythm. Each swing felt better, stronger. I could feel the weight of every shot, the thud of impact. Sweat stung my eyes, but I didn't care. I wasn't just here to win. I was here to show him who the hell I was. Julian responded with a perfect return, the ball flashing across the court. I barely managed to get my racket on it, but it was enough. He smiled, just a little, and I swore I saw something shift in his expression. Something dangerous. Something like respect. But I wasn't fooled. This wasn't about tennis anymore, it was a fight, and we were both in it, teeth bared. The next shot, Julian sent a blistering forehand my way. I lunged, my body screaming as I tried to meet it. It passed me, a blur. Too slow, he said. I gritted my teeth. You're gonna regret that. And I meant it. We finished after 2 hours, both of us drenched in sweat, sitting against the wall trying to catch our breath. My muscles screamed, but there was something satisfying about pushing myself this hard. Julian passed me a water bottle, and I drank from it greedily, ignoring the way his eyes followed me. You have anger issues, he said, his tone almost clinical. It wasn't a question. And you have a dickwad issue, I shot back, wiping my mouth with the back of my hand. Can we have any interaction where you don't treat me like crap? Nope, he raised an eyebrow, not even slightly fazed. I'm serious. Attitude is gratitude. I gave him a deadpan look. Where'd you read that? A fortune cookie? Maybe, but it's still true. Well, it sounds like something a motivational speaker would say before charging you $500 for a seminar, I quipped. He shrugged. You'd be surprised how much people pay to hear that. Yeah, well, I'll stick to my anger issues for now, thanks. He leaned back, stretching his legs out in front of him. Suit yourself. I took another swig of water, still trying to process the fact that I'd just played tennis for 2 hours with Julian without snapping his neck. Julian straightened up, his usual confidence wavering for just a moment. There's a charity gala coming up. It'll be our first event after we, got married. He paused, glancing at me, his eyes quickly shifting away. Maybe we should, practice holding hands or kissing or something. So it doesn't look like we've never done it before. I stared at him, surprised by the flush creeping up his neck. I couldn't help but feel my own cheeks warm. The idea of practicing something so intimate, something that was so fake between us, felt ridiculous. But seeing him squirm, that felt almost too good to pass up. Yeah, whatever, I muttered, looking away, pretending to be uninterested. Julian cleared his throat. And we should probably get to know each other better too. Why? I thought you knew everything about me from those trash tabloids you like to read. I snorted. His flush deepened, and he shot me a look that barely masked his irritation. They're not all lies, he muttered, but there was an awkwardness in his tone I couldn't ignore. I leaned back, crossing my arms over my chest. Maybe not, but I'm sure there's a hell of a lot of exaggeration in there. Julian's lips twisted in what might have been a smile, though it looked more like a grimace. Look, I'm just saying it'd probably be easier if we actually knew something real about each other. I couldn't help it. I couldn't just let the moment slide. Like what? What do you want to know? How much I hate the sound of your voice, or the fact that you think your hair's the only thing that matters? Wanker, he scoffed, grabbed his stuff and started walking away. I snatched my stuff, stumbling after him as he went to the locker rooms. We headed back to the apartment to change. Julian's blonde hair was wet, plastered against his brow as he spoke on the phone with Glenda while I spread out on the couch, bored out of my mind and wanting to get this over with. The gala was tonight, and Trina had just texted me the information for my tuxedo, which would be delivered to Julian's apartment. I still needed to figure out what to do with my apartment. The lease wouldn't be up for a few more months, and it was probably best I try to sublet it to make some more cash in the meantime. I was itching for a drink. Sobriety was overrated. I remembered my steps, counting backward, trying to calm myself down. Julian ended the phone call with Glenda and stood in front of the couch, his jeans hanging low on his hips, his white muscle shirt stretched taut against his chest. So, how do you want this to go? He asked. I shrugged. 21 questions? Can you be serious? I am, I shot back, and he rolled his eyes, flopping down beside me. Can you show me that magic trick where you get your head so far up your ass? You first, I snorted. Okay, what's your mom's name? Julian gave me a deadpan look. My mother's name is Christy. Dad's Philip. I hate all animals, cats and dogs. I've been playing professionally since I was 9. I'm a Capricorn. My favorite color's blue. My favorite movie's The Dark Knight. My favorite show, The Boys. I hate chocolate. I'm a proud screaming bottom, but I can also top like Vin Diesel and I enjoy rimming. You? My jaw slowly dropped and heat crawled up my neck. I turned away, clearing my throat. That was graphic, I stammered, trying to shake the mental images from my head. I'm a Virgo. Mom's name is Lena. Dad is a deadbeat. My favorite show's South Park. My favorite movie, Fast 10 or anything with Dwayne Johnson. I guess I'm what they call versatile. I don't know, and I love chocolate. Julian raised an eyebrow, a sly grin tugging at the corner of his mouth. I think you're missing something. I shot him a confused look. What? You forgot to mention your favorite position. He leaned in closer, his voice teasing. Shut up. I shoved him off, my face flaming. Okay, what else? Is it true what they say, that you're an addict? He kept his voice light, but I could see the tightness around his eyes. I use it recreationally, I shrugged. Not enough to get caught since they do regular testing, despite what you think. Alcohol is my vice. Is that going to be a problem, going forward? Do you mean it's going to mess up your little plans? I snorted. No, I'll keep myself in check. Good. Julian licked his lips, his eyes darting down to my mouth. So, why don't we try now? My throat went dry. Try? What? Julian's mouth curved into a smile, and before I could say anything else, he threw his legs over my waist, straddling me. Kissing. Where did all this confidence come from? My hands immediately went to cup his firm ass, and I groaned, trying to remember why I hated him so much. It's fake, remember? Right. Fake. I cleared my throat, my mind racing. Julian stared at me for several moments. Then, like at the wedding, He leaned in gently, his lips brushing against mine. I kissed him, open mouth and slow. Just the sort of kiss that made my skin prick so deliciously. The type of kiss that made my lips feel like they were tingling. Julian was surprisingly compact, the weight of him full and yet soft. I poured all my hatred into the kiss, my contempt and malice by sucking on his bottom lip, prying his mouth open, and breathing into him. Julian doesn't hold back either. His hands grip the back of my neck, pulling me deeper, his breath mingling with mine as if he had every right to do this. I couldn't tell if I hated him more or less. A knock on the door interrupts us. I pull back, lips swollen and puffy, my breath ragged. "Satisfied?" I muttered. "Yeah," he said, crawling off my lap to answer the door. The bodyguard dropped off my tux, and I fled to the bathroom, slamming the door shut. My face burned, sizzling from where he touched me. It wasn't real. It wasn't. And yet, my body said otherwise. The drive to the tennis charity gala was quiet, filled with the soft hum of the car's engine and the ticking of the clock. We pulled up to a sprawling venue, the lights from the massive building reflecting off the glass and marble. The place looked like it had been pulled straight from some high-end movie set. I was just another pawn here, another face in the crowd of wealth, power, and pretense. Inside, it was all gold and glass, a sea of tuxedos and extravagant gowns. There were names here I recognized, tennis legends and international sponsors, all mingling in the lavish lobby, exchanging pleasantries as the town hall events unfolded. The rich and famous, the people who ruled the courts, the sponsors who threw around money like it was nothing. I caught a glimpse of a few A-list celebrities, chatting with the tennis elite. I tugged at the edges of my jacket, adjusting it as the flashes of cameras went off in quick succession. The tux was suffocating, but Julian looked effortlessly at home. A black tux and crisp white shirt, the slightest hint of a smile pulling at his lips as he posed for the cameras. His eyes shifted to me for just a second, meeting mine, and I tried to ignore the way my heart skipped. He knew how to work the crowd. Unnatural. The photographers were relentless, capturing every angle, every moment as we stood side by side. I stood straight, the weight of my own discomfort barely noticeable under the bright lights. "You look decent," Julian said, his smile widening as another camera snapped. "Thanks," I muttered. "You too, asshole." He chuckled, flashing that damn charming smile as we walked further into the gala, surrounded by handshakes and polite conversation. None of it real. Just another game we were playing. And for some reason, I was losing. We stepped into the ballroom, the scent of expensive perfume and freshly polished wood filling the air. But it wasn't the decorations or the clinking of glasses that grabbed my attention. It was the alcohol. Bottles lined the tables, gold and glistening, just waiting for me to crack. My hands twitched, craving the burn, the familiar release. But I bit it back, pushed the temptation down as far as I could. I told myself I wasn't going to fall into that trap again. Not here. Not now. I grabbed a water, holding it tight like a lifeline, but the pull of whiskey was stronger than ever. My head felt foggy as I forced myself to ignore the knot in my stomach. Then, Julian's friends appeared. Too damn loud and too damn close. They circled us like vultures. "Ah, Carter. These are my friends, Sarah, Jaden, and Landon." "So this is the guy, huh?" One of them, a tall guy with a smirk, said, eyeing me up and down. "The temper isn't just for show, huh?" "Yeah, I didn't think Julian would settle for someone like you," another added, crossing his arms, clearly enjoying the discomfort in my face. I clenched my jaw. "Screw off," I muttered, just barely holding it together. Julian tried to step in. "Enough," he said. But they weren't done. "Seriously, Julian," one of them pressed. "You really want to be stuck with this guy?" I opened my mouth, ready to tell them all to go to hell, but Julian cut in before I could say anything. "Carter and I are married," Julian said, his hand slipping into mine, a firm, confident grip that shut them all down. "And if you have a problem with that, then go to hell." For a moment, there was silence. Then the tall guy shrugged, but his sneer didn't fade. Whatever, man. Not my circus. They walked off, leaving us standing there. My heart was still pounding, but Julian didn't let go of my hand. You didn't have to do that, I muttered, my hands suddenly clammy. Yes, I did, Julian muttered. Anyway, I think your phone's buzzing. Right. I fumbled for my phone, cursing when I saw it was my mom calling. Excusing myself, I stepped away from Julian, picking up on the fourth ring. What? Get your little fairy ass over here and give me the money for the rent. Mother, it's always a pleasure to hear from you. Stop playing stupid. I need it to buy groceries. You haven't bought groceries since I was in grade school, I hissed, trying not to draw attention. I'm at an event. I'll call you later. Don't mess this up for me, Carter, or I'll let all those rich people know your dirty little secrets. I hung up the phone, my hands shaking, my heart pounding in my chest. Releasing a harsh breath, I turned only to see Julian rounding the corner with Eric hot on his heels. Eric. God, I was sick of him too. He worked as one of the PR agents, and he and Julian hit it off right away. I begrudgingly followed after them, only to stop when they paused near the bar. I mean, I don't know what else you want me to say, Eric said, his jaw working. You promised me. I know what I promised, but things changed, Eric clipped. Please, Julian breathed. He sounded so desperate. I need you. You're my best friend. Eric's eyes narrowed into slits. Is that all I am? Even after we spent that wonderful night together? I felt the world tilt sideways. No wonder Eric had been scrutinizing us so closely. They were lovers, and Julian wasn't even going to tell me. Then why the hell did he choose to marry me? Eric would have been the most logical choice. Why drag me into this mess? For the publicity? Julian hurriedly looked around. Eric, I'm sorry. It's done, okay? You mean a lot to me. Save it. Eric held up a hand to stop him. Fine. I'm here. He sighed. What do you need? Carter's image is... Julian hesitated, looking a bit uncomfortable. Like the Titanic? Not very good. I just need someone to help with that. You want me to turn Rambo into Betty White? Yeah, not happening. Please, Julian begged. For me? Eric licked his dry lips and snorted. Fine. Anything for you. So what are we drinking tonight? God, I have no idea how you stand being married to that ape. This is the best dressed I've seen him all year. Even when he plays, his clothes have holes in them. Did they know I was this close to being homeless? That the rent was well overdue, and Trina had just fired me because of my last match? Did they know my mother didn't work? I was the only one supporting her? No, they didn't know, because Julian never asked. He never cared. He was just like all the rest. Hatred lanced through me, and I watched Eric beside him as they spoke about me. Eric feasting on his wickedness. A lump swelled in my throat, and before I could stop myself, my feet were already moving, carrying me through the crowds and out the door. Carrying me through the crowds and out the door.
Chapter 4. Julian. Have you seen Carter? I asked for what felt like the millionth time to the people who passed by the doors. Eric was picking at the dirt beneath his fingernails. Honey, I think he's gone. Bollocks, I muttered. The gala was just getting started. Why the hell did he leave? I angled my head to see above the crowds, trying to get a glimpse of my wayward husband, before I spotted Glenda coming toward me, her face like thunder. GQ Sports wants to talk to you, Glenda approached, her blonde hair piled high on her head, and her sequined dress sparkled in the light. Where's Carter? I resisted the urge to shrug, knowing that wouldn't go over well. I mean, how the hell should I know? He just walked away without saying anything, which was so Carter, by the way. In the loo, I think, I lied. I'll get him. Hurry up, Glenda hissed. You guys should be sticking your tongues down each other's throats or playing footsie or whatever it is young married couples do. Right, I'll get on that, I muttered, walking away from her quickly. Carter wasn't in the loo. Wonderful. I scrubbed a hand over my face, my annoyance prickling. Where the hell was he? Taking out my phone, I dialed his number again, and it went straight to voicemail. You better be in mortal danger, I hissed into the receiver. Call me. I hung up. The back door opened, and a few of the waitstaff came in and out. I watched the dual doors swing open to what appeared to be a smoking area. Following the steady stream of smoke and the sound of people coughing their lungs out, I made my way to the back, and lo and behold, there was Carter, chatting it up with the waitstaff like he wasn't supposed to be glued to my side. Oi! I marched over, grabbing his bicep. What do you think you're doing? Smoking? He wrenched out of my grip. I'll be back in a second, yeah? I'm busy. You need to come back now or else... I caught the eye of several people watching us and smoothed out my expression. I need you in there. Confusion flashed in Carter's eyes. What? Jesus Christ, this guy's head was as thick as concrete. I need you in there. Please, we have an interview coming up. Oh. Carter looked around too, just now realizing we were being watched. He dropped the cigarette onto the ground and crushed it beneath his foot. He moved to walk away, but I grabbed his hand and intertwined our fingers. Carter looked mildly shocked, but his expression quickly went blank. He squeezed my hand hard enough to make me wince, and half dragged me inside. Glenda waved us down, frantically ushering us over to the GQ Sports booth, where a reporter stood dressed in a three-piece suit. Carter, Julian! What a pleasure. Jeff plastered on a wide, camera-ready smile. Jeff Holland, GQ Sports. Thanks for taking the time. Of course. I slid into the chair, forcing a polite smile. Anything for the press? Carter dropped into the seat beside me, arms folded. Yeah, thrilled to be here. Jeff chuckled, flipping open his notepad. Let's start easy. Newlyweds. How's married life treating you two? Great. Carter's voice was flat, his expression unreadable. Fantastic, I echoed, dry as sandpaper. Really just a dream come true. Jeff smirked, eyes flicking between us. You sound ecstatic. Any big adjustments? Bad habits you've had to break? Well, Carter leaves wet towels on the bed, and he steals the covers. I leaned back, crossing my legs. Yeah? You set 20 alarms in the morning and sleep through all of them. Carter scoffed, shifting in his seat. Marriage is about compromise. I shrugged. I let him breathe, and in return, he lets me live. Speaking of compromise, Carter, let's talk about your recent losing streak, Jeff said. Carter stiffened, fingers curling over his knee, jaw tightening. What of it? Tough season. Tough year, actually. Fans are wondering if you've lost your edge. What do you think? Jeff's voice was smooth, almost sympathetic. Almost. Carter exhaled slowly, eyes dark. Rage flashed in his eyes and I intervened before Carter attacked him and was arrested for murder. Wow, Jeff, I love your approach to journalism. Really warm. Have you ever considered hosting a funeral? I smiled, all teeth. Jeff's expression flickered, but he recovered quickly. Just doing my job. Speaking of which, why don't we get a kiss for the camera? Crap. Why did the gods curse me like this? My stomach twisted. Carter exhaled sharply, avoiding eye contact. I turned to Glenda, but she was already looming just off to the side, giving me the look that screamed, "Do it, or I will skin you alive and wear you as a coat." Wonderful. Carter turned toward me. I turned toward him. We paused, then he rolled his eyes, leaning in. His lips met mine. I expected it to be quick, mechanical, just enough to get Jeff off our backs. But the second his mouth brushed mine, heat coiled low in my stomach, warm and insistent. His hand cut my jaw, fingers skimming my skin. The air felt too thick, the room too hot. I sucked in a harsh breath, my heart thundering in my ears, and just before I could deepen it, suck on his bottom lip, he was pulling away. Beautiful. That should shut down the breakup rumours. At least for a week, Jeff announced. Carter stood, shoving his chair back with a scrape. Pleasure, Jeff. I rose too, flashing him a tight smile. Really, top-tier etiquette. Jeff waved us off as we left the booth, and Carter avoided looking at me, his fists shoved deep into his slacks. Glenda herded us away before Jeff could fire another question. So, did you enjoy that? Carter shot me a sideways look. Yeah, like I enjoyed dental surgery. I scoffed, his lips twitched. Sure does sound like your type of kink. I looked away, ignoring the way my skin still burned. Are we done for the night? Carter asked, checking his watch. No, we need to pose for some pictures and at least act like we don't hate each other. Sounds impossible, Carter muttered. And we may have to kiss. Again, I said, my face burning. Just try to enjoy it, yeah? No promises. Carter stalked off to the bar and ordered himself a cranberry juice, and I followed. It was going to be a long night. By the end of the night, my lips were puffy and swollen, and Carter's tie was slightly askew, probably from when I'd gotten a little carried away after one of the paparazzi asked us to kiss, and I really put my back into it. Carter headed straight to the guest room, slamming the door shut while I went to my own bedroom, stripping off my clothes before lying on my back and staring up at the ceiling. My fingers traced my bottom lip, where I could still feel the imprint of his lip ring digging into my skin. He was so freaking hot. I'd noticed before, of course I had, even back when I was his mentor, but his attitude was so unbearable it practically cancelled out his looks. The dark, fringed hair that framed his eyes, that gaudy lip ring, the tattoos covering his chest and arms. My body stirred, and I exhaled hard. No. We were in a fake relationship. It would be beyond stupid to start catching feelings for the brat now. The thing was, Carter was a skilled tennis player, probably capable of being one of the best if he could just get his head out of his arse and actually play. Then there was the issue of sobriety. I didn't know the full details, but rumours swirled that he'd shown up to interviews drunk, sometimes even while playing. I didn't know how true that was, but from what I'd seen, he always looked rough. I wanted to help him, but I didn't know how. It was obvious he didn't trust me, even if we were married. Turning onto my side, I closed my eyes and forced myself to sleep. I woke to raised voices in the living room and groaned rolling out of bed. Carter, I called out, stumbling into the kitchen just as he was shoving his phone into his back pocket. What are you doing? Nothing, talking to my mum. Oh! I frowned. Everything okay? It's fine, he snapped. What's on the agenda for today? I opened my mouth, but the words died in my throat when I saw him standing in my kitchen shirtless, his red shorts hanging low on his hips. My eyes tracked his firm torso, but stopped dead at the jagged scar cutting across his upper arm. A knock at the door startled me, and I frowned. Jules? It's me. Crap. Carter and I locked eyes, and for one horrifying minute, neither of us moved. Then I jumped into action. I tossed his clothes everywhere, racing to his bedroom, grabbing his stuff and flinging it onto my bed. Come here, I yelled at him. Carter's eyes widened as I grabbed his face and kissed him, because that was the logical solution to this disaster. He kissed me back, cupping the back of my head, and I yanked off, breathless. There, at least it looked like we were making out or something. Ah, come in, I said, pretending to straighten my pyjamas. Eric used his key to open the door and froze when he saw the state of Carter, undressed and my rumpled clothing. Did I come at a bad time? Not at all, I said, my voice pitchy and way too high. We were just, morning, quickie and all that. What's up? Eric's eyes narrowed suspiciously. Right. He leaned against the doorframe. Anyway, the competition starts soon, so I thought you might want to come with me. What competition? I blinked, still trying to process what was happening. What competition? I repeated, furrowing my brow. Eric gave me a look like I'd lost my mind. The junior tournament, where the upcoming stars are. He paused, seeing my clueless expression. You seriously forgot about it? I had. In the whirlwind of everything, the tournament had slipped my mind completely. Right, that, of course, I muttered, trying to sound casual, but the truth was I hadn't even bothered to look at the schedule. Professional tennis had more tournaments than I could count. Grand Slams, ATP Finals, Davis Cup, and then these smaller junior competitions where the next generation of players were being scouted. I'd been so caught up in everything else, I hadn't thought twice about it. "I'll get dressed and we can head out," I mumbled, heading to the bathroom. "Well, try not to rip each other's clothes off on your way there." Eric's laughter followed me into the shower. On the way there, Carter was practically vibrating with tension. His jaw was clenched, his eyes focused straight ahead as if he could ignore everything around him. My bodyguards ushered us out and into the van, where Glenda and Trina were already waiting. Trina gave Carter a cool once-over, her eyes lingering on him for a second longer than I was comfortable with, while Eric pretended Carter didn't exist, his eyes glued to his phone. This tournament was strictly for the juniors, the rising stars who still had a long road ahead of them before they could join the ranks of the big names in tennis. We weren't even supposed to be in the spotlight. We were just there to watch and support, nothing more. But the second we arrived, I realised just how much my presence had shifted the atmosphere. The crowd went absolutely insane. People screamed my name, voices rising in a deafening wave, cameras flashing in every direction. I felt like I was in the middle of a storm as my bodyguards cleared a path, leading me toward the high seats in the VIP box. I could barely make out the faces of the fans below, but the energy was palpable, so thick you could practically taste it in the air. I was ushered to my seat, the roar of the crowd only intensified. The crowd erupted into chants of my name. Julian, Julian, Julian. The energy was so electric that it felt like the entire stadium was vibrating with it. The announcer's voice rang out, calling attention to me as I stood, raising my hand and giving a quick wave. The applause was deafening, but then the announcer dropped the bombshell. And joining Julian today is his husband, Carter. The reaction was less than enthusiastic. Some cheered, but not nearly as loud as for me. I glanced over at Carter, who stood stiffly, and gave a small nod, trying to remain composed as the crowd quieted down in preparation for the match. Emmanuel Finney, an up-and-coming star, was dominating his opponent, setting the court on fire with each perfectly executed serve. His forehand was a missile, his backhand a work of art. Every time his opponent tried to get the upper hand, Finney just crushed the ball into the corner, leaving the guy scrambling. It was impressive, to say the least. The kind of tennis that had the crowd on their feet, murmuring in awe at his precision. Carter, however, seemed more interested in disappearing than in the match. He stood abruptly and excused himself, heading toward the restroom. But when the match came to an end, and he still hadn't returned, I frowned, my concern creeping in. I checked the time. It was nearly over. Something didn't sit right. I slipped out of my seat and made my way around the back to find him. As I rounded the corner, I caught a snippet of his voice, sharp and low. "Don't call me again." I stopped in my tracks, spotting Carter in a private area, away from the crowds. He looked tense, his posture rigid. "What's going on?" I asked, startling him. "Nothing," Carter snapped, turning to face me, his eyes narrowed. "What do you want? I was on my way back, so don't get your boxers in a twist." God, he was hostile. What had happened? I couldn't help but wonder where this animosity had come from, especially so early in the day. Is something wrong?" I asked, stepping closer. "Yeah, this whole thing is wrong, but whatever." His tone dripped with bitterness. "Let's go back before your other boy toy gets worried." He shouldered past me without waiting for a response. "Boy toy?" I grabbed his arm, stopping him. "What are you talking about?" "Are you seriously going to stand there and lie to me?" Carter's voice was laced with anger. "Don't tell me you weren't with Eric before you started going dumpster diving." My breath caught in my chest. That was nothing." "He doesn't seem to think it was nothing." Carter cut me off, his jaw clenched as his eyes flashed with frustration. "Anyway, I don't care. What I want to know is why you chose me and not him. He would have been the most logical choice. He probably wouldn't try to strangle you in your sleep." I swallowed, my throat tight. Eric is my best friend, nothing more. I said it, trying to make it sound as convincing as I could. Sorry I didn't tell you. Yeah, you have a tendency to do that, he muttered, his voice thick with disdain. I wasn't sure what exactly he meant by that, but I hated the tension between us. I needed us to at least appear like we were getting along. This whole married life thing was supposed to work, wasn't it? We were supposed to be affectionate, hold hands, kiss each other in front of the cameras. If we fell apart now, everything would crumble. So, are we good? Define good. Carter, I huffed, I'm trying to be reasonable here, and you promised you'd make an effort. That's almost impossible when you talk crap about me behind my back. What? I froze. What are you talking about? Yeah, I heard what you and Eric were talking about the other day, how I'm a train wreck or the Titanic. I heard it all. Heat rushed to my cheeks. I meant, we were just saying how... I faltered, unsure of how to explain. It wasn't like that. Save it, Carter hissed. Whatever, I know exactly who I am, but who the hell are you? Are you just going to pull me out of the fire only to throw me back in? Behind closed doors, you act like my friend, but the second your friends show up, you treat me like dirt. God, you're so two-faced. I can't even keep track of how many different faces you're hiding anymore. I froze at his words, the sting of them hitting harder than I expected. Carter. Let's just get this over with. That's what I'm here for, right? To stand around and look pretty, Carter walked off, rounding the corner and disappearing out of sight. I stood there with shame crawling all over my skin. He was right. I was two-faced, smiling, and kissing him one moment, but the second Eric said anything bad about him, I went along with it. No wonder he was so hostile to me. He couldn't trust me. I wasn't trustworthy. God, I groaned, clawing at my forehead. How could I fix this? How could I make Carter see that what he had overheard had been a mistake? I didn't mean it. Yet, I knew to Carter this wasn't the first time I said bad things about him behind his back. He was right to hate me. Damn it. Why is it every time it felt like we were taking 2 steps forward and 5 steps back?
Chapter 5. Carter. You were a mistake from the start, and every day you prove me right. My eyes slipped closed as I sent up a silent prayer to every god I could think of. Surely, one of them had the power to make her disappear. When I opened them, she was still there, sucking on a cigarette like it was the only thing keeping her alive. Smoke curled toward me as she exhaled, her cheeks hollowed, her skin stretched tight like old leather. Ah, mother dearest, I sighed. Always a pleasure to be emotionally curb-stomped before breakfast. Where's the rent? She wasn't always like this, which might be hard to believe. She was actually very loving once, very supporting, helping me through school and paying for my tennis equipment and lessons. But then she meant Asher got hooked on drugs and she was never the same ever again. She spiraled, looking for love in all the wrong places, trying to bleed blood from a stone. I should have hated her, and maybe I did for the way she treated me, but at the end of the day she was my mother. She was all I had left. I'm strapped for cash right now, give me a few days. You've had weeks, she blew smoke in my face. What are you doing uptown anyway? I went to your place and you weren't there. I hurriedly looked around to make sure I hadn't been followed when I went to meet my mother today regarding the rent. The alley was dark and empty, nothing like the bright restaurant beside it. The air smelled like wet pavement and spoiled takeout. Graffiti curled along the brick walls like old scars, and a rusty dumpster sagged under the weight of overflowing trash bags. Laughter and clinking glasses spilled from the cafe across the street from us. My mother wore a raggedy neon pink shirt, high-waisted tights that exposed too much. Her brown, greasy hair was thrown into a lazy bun, and her eyes were wild as any bull. I hated looking at her. You'll get your money, I clipped, turning to walk away, but she grabbed my arm. Is it true you got married? She laughed. I'm surprised. No one will ever love you the way you are. You're just too much of a burden. I gritted my teeth. Was there anything else? Or did you just come here to torment me? Carter, she shook her head. When are you going to learn? I'm all you have. You should be nicer to me. I made you. I created you. And Asher was right. You don't show me any respect." "Do you give me anything to respect?" I shot back. She laughed harder. "Where would you be without me? And now you've gotten married and didn't say anything to your mother. Hitched yourself to the fairy tennis player who's better than you in every way possible? That's pathetic even for you. The Hawks don't bend, but then again maybe you do." "Shut up," I hissed, my nostrils flaring. "If there's nothing else, go to hell." "Where are you going? Don't you walk away from me, Carter." "Fine, leave. You were a horrible mistake anyway. I wish I could go back in time and erase you from my life. Don't forget I know your secrets, Carter. I know all about you." Her shrill followed me all the way down the street until I got back to the penthouse apartment seething. The elevator ride felt like a slow glide into hell. My mother's words stuck in my head, sharp and rusted. My breath was tight, my chest hot with anger. Worthless. She always thought I was worthless, and maybe I was. The doors slid open. Julian was there, shirtless with his AirPods in doing push-ups. The TV flickered with a soccer match, bright and alive. He moved like nothing in the world could touch him. Like nothing mattered. Things between us hadn't gotten better since the charity gala, and he opted to keep his distance from me while I fizzled with anger. His words to Eric had struck a nerve, but I wasn't going to let him know that. Julian was one of the best players in the league. Everybody flocked to be near him, to be his friend, and when I had tried, when I put myself out there desperate to get close to him, all he did was laugh at me. Well, screw him. I grabbed my stuff and slammed the door behind me. The second I was out the door, my sneakers hit the pavement hard, breath coming fast. The chain link fence rattled as I shoved the court gate open. I snatched a ball and threw myself into the game. The ball hit the pavement, sharp and solid, over and over. Every dribble cracked against my mother's words. Every drive, every shot, was a shove against Carter's smug face. My muscles burned, my blood like a pot boiling over. There were bodies crowding the court, watching me, but I kept playing. The ball snapped against my palm, a steady rhythm. I didn't care about points. I wanted to break something. I wanted to feel the rim shake, hear the impact, drown in the movement. I played until my arms shook and my legs felt like stone. The rage faded, leaving me empty and raw. But it wasn't enough. I needed a drink. The thought clawed at me. My lips were dry. My hands shook. I knew where I was going. Somewhere dark, somewhere loud, somewhere I could disappear. "Hey," a voice broke me out of playing. "Everything okay?" Julian was standing there against the fading light of the sun, his white shirt and hair drenched in gold. He looked regal almost, standing tall, a racket clasped in his firm hand and his eyes wide and liquid. Why did he care? He was only here for a green card anyway. Why did the master concern himself with the puppet? I gasped for air, sweat pouring off me, my hair plastered to my forehead. Julian pursed his lips, and I wanted to kiss him again. The thought was like a riptide, but I stamped it down, crushing it where it stood. "I'm fine. Want to get something to eat? There's a pub down the street." Pub. Even how he spoke grated on me. My stomach chose to growl insistently, and I nodded, gesturing to the locker rooms. Julian smiled and nodded, telling me he'd wait for me while I showered and changed into my clothes. We headed to the bar, Julian ordering fish and chips, sounding very British, while I ordered water with some lemon and some nuts. The prices here were outrageous, and I couldn't afford much else. "It's on me," Julian said. "For saving me," he laughed. "For marrying me." "If you say so," I said. "Then I'll order the steak," I told the waiter when they came back. We sat in companionable silence, me fiddling with a napkin, and Julian looking at all the pictures on the walls. "What part?" I asked. "Sorry?" Julian replied. "England, where are you from?" "Oh, Birmingham. Why?" "Shouldn't that be something your husband knows?" I clipped. "Oh, right," Julian flushed. "Yeah, Birmingham, where the steam engine and the anchor of the Titanic were built in the Black Country." "Thanks for that useless information," I muttered. Julian shrugged. "It's something to talk about rather than staring at the walls." He looked around the room and straightened when he saw a few people had their cameras out. Crap. He flagged down one of the waiters and asked for a private booth. I frowned, watching him. Then the second I sat in the booth, Julian slid in right beside me, almost pressed up against me, the heat of his body almost dizzying. "What are you doing?" "Making it work," he hissed back and leaned against me, his hand on my knee. "Now, what were we talking about? Oh yes, Birmingham. I grew up there my whole life, played tennis professionally, got a crack at Wimbledon when I was 18, then headed onward, found opportunities in the US Opening and all that, like the US Open, Indian Wells, and the Miami Open. Big places like that. And, what? How'd you end up here?" I asked, just as the food was being placed in front of us. I took a sip of the water and lemon, soothing my aching throat. "Oh, well," he hesitated. "I had a heart problem." I almost spat out my drink. "What?" "Yeah." Julian's laughter tickled my ear. "It's called hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, where the walls become thick and stiff. I had a transplant when I was like 15, I don't know. But I still need to see a specialist here for medication. Most of them I can't get in England." "What medications?" "Some for blood thinners, beta blockers, and ACE inhibitors," Julian explained, his fingers tapping the table nervously. "There's also this one, a calcium channel blocker, to help my heart relax. It helps control the stiffening." But the real kicker? I can't get all of them in England. They don't have the same formulas or combinations, so I have to see a specialist here who can provide the exact stuff I need. I blinked, taking all of it in. "That's serious." "Yeah," he shrugged, trying to brush it off. "But I'm making it work." "Is that why you need to stay here?" "Yeah, that, and I have sponsors that would drop me if I had to live abroad. It's just too much of a hassle. Besides, I love it here. It's been my home for the past 4 years." "But your heart..." My eyes dipped to his chest. "How'd you play so well with a transplanted heart?" Julian shifted, the playful smile fading for a moment. "Well, after the transplant it wasn't easy. A heart transplant means my old heart was replaced with a donor's, and for a while, I had to deal with things like rejection risk, adjusting my body to the new heart. But the thing is, the heart's healthy now. It's strong. I had to undergo a lot of rehab, and they put me on immunosuppressants to prevent my body from attacking the new organ. But as long as I stay on top of my meds, I'm good. The new heart's like a new lease on life. It's actually more efficient than my old one." I nodded, processing it all. "So, you're pretty much good to go now?" "Yeah, for the most part," Julian replied. "I have to keep monitoring it, but now that my body's adjusted to the new heart, it's like it's always been mine. They say heart transplants usually give patients a better quality of life than they had before, and for me, that's definitely true." "Why didn't you tell me?" Julian chewed on his lower lip. "You wouldn't have believed me. I know what you think of me, that I'm some entitled tosser without any morals, but I like you, Carter. I think you're great. Or you would be great if you could just focus on playing rather than winning." He was blushing again, prettily, and I hated how my body was starting to react, especially with the way he was pressed up against me. A part of me wondered how far I could test this. Would he back away or lean into me? Time to find out. I angled my head, staring deep into his green eyes. "I like winning. It makes me hard." "I'm sure many things do," Julian whispered. "But winning isn't everything. It's most things in life." I kissed just under his jaw and watched him shiver. "Besides, I'm an excellent winner. I win over and over again. Sometimes I can win all over people's faces." Julian burst out laughing, shaking his head. "You're a mutt." "And proud of it," I smirked. "Can I kiss you?" Julian pulled back, his eyes searching, and he nodded his head. The moment our lips brushed, it was like a spark in the dark, an electric current that jolted through my veins, setting every nerve ablaze. Julian's breath hitched, soft and warm against my skin, and I leaned in, hungry for more. The kiss deepened, wild and consuming, as if the world could burn down around us and we'd still be lost in each other. His taste and the faint tang of the lemon from earlier made me dizzy. I moved closer, heart racing, just about to deepen it when a throat cleared, pulling us back to reality. We broke apart, both of us blushing, and spent the rest of the meal in silence, but my skin was tingling as Julian's hand never left my thigh. The crisp air filled my lungs as we stepped out of the bar, both of us avoiding eye contact as we walked back to his apartment. "Why did you hate me so much?" Julian asked. "Wouldn't you hate someone who was nice to your face and said bad things behind your back?" "Fair enough," he murmured. "I was a wanker, sure. I'll give you that." I shrugged and kept walking. "You haven't even tried to redeem yourself, by the way." "Is there a way how?" Julian asked. I shrugged again. "Maybe if you put your mouth to good use." Julian's light chuckle made the hairs on my arm stand up. "You'd like that, wouldn't you? What if I said yes? That the marriage isn't real until it's been consummated at least twice?" A laugh burst out of me and I turned to him. "Seriously?" His smile was coy and my breath hitched. He didn't say anything more as he led me back to the penthouse. The second he got upstairs, he tore off his shirt, sending a come-hither gaze over his shoulder. My throat went dry, and I hurried to follow suit, tossing off my shirt and everything else. I drank Julian in, the shape of him, his lovely bones. He was lithe, a creature of movement, of fluid grace. We were the same height, but he was slimmer, more agile, like a willow tree, flexible, bendable. My eyes dipped down to his chest, and that scar there pierced me too. A jagged thing, ridged and awful, pink with scar tissue, marking the length of his sternum. I placed my hand over it, feeling the steady thump of his heart beneath my palm. Julian's blonde hair hung low over his brow, his gaze darkening with an intoxicating lust. My breath caught, but I moved instinctively, gliding my hand up his chest, tracing the soft ridges of muscle to cup the back of his neck. I drew him in, close, impossibly close, and kissed him with a savageness that took us both into the heavens. I woke, calmer now, my heart still racing with Julian wrapped in my arms, hickeys dotting his neck like a map of last night's passion. I kissed him softly, nuzzling into his warmth, and he groaned in his sleep, holding on to me tighter. Last night had been the best night of my life, a night of surrender, of needing, of becoming something more than I ever thought possible. I slipped out of bed, careful not to disturb him, and made my way to the kitchen to prepare breakfast for Julian. I wanted to do something for him, to show him that I cared. Pancakes, eggs, bacon. Simple things, but enough to make him smile. It wasn't long before he wandered in, wearing nothing but one of my old t-shirts, the fabric hanging loosely around his frame. I couldn't help but laugh at the sight, the way he looked so carefree in my clothes. He reached over to steal a kiss as I stirred the pancake batter, and we both laughed, sharing the warmth of the moment in the cozy kitchen. Our lips met again, slow and lingering, like the world outside didn't matter at all. "You're wearing my shirt," I murmured against his lips, pressing my body closer to his. "Is that a problem?" he teased, his voice low and playful as he slid his hand down my chest. "Not at all," I said with a smirk, but my hands moved to the hem of his shirt, teasing the fabric up just slightly. "In fact, I think it looks better on you than it ever did on me." He chuckled, the sound vibrating against my mouth as I leaned in to kiss him harder, more insistently this time. His fingers found their way to the back of my neck, pulling me deeper into the kiss as his tongue slid against mine. I pulled away just slightly, lips brushing against his as I breathed. "You know, you're a dangerous distraction." Julian grinned, his eyes darkening with that familiar heated look. "That's the point, isn't it?" I raised an eyebrow, teasing, my fingers trailing down his spine. "You think you're in charge here, huh?" He leaned in close, his lips ghosting over my ear. "I'm in charge of what happens next," he whispered, and I shivered at the feel of his breath against my skin. Before I could respond, there was a sudden knock at the door. I frowned, pulling away from him reluctantly, feeling the heat of his touch still burning into me. I wiped my hands on a dish towel and went to answer it, standing in nothing but my boxers. When I opened the door, I blinked in surprise. Eric stood there holding a box of cookies, looking at me with a wide grin. "Morning," he said, his voice amused. "I got Julian some cookies." I raised an eyebrow, glancing at the box and then back at him. "What are you doing here?" Eric glanced past me into the apartment, his eyes widening when he noticed Julian still in the kitchen. Looks like I came at a bad time." "You're telling me," I muttered under my breath, glancing back at Julian, who was still leaning against the counter, wearing nothing but that damn t-shirt. I could feel the heat in my cheeks as I tried to compose myself. "What do you want, Eric?" He held up the box of cookies, offering it as if nothing out of the ordinary had just happened. "Figured you could use a snack," he said casually. "Though, looks like I interrupted something." "We already ate." I moved to slam the door, but he caught it. "Funny," Eric shoved past me. "Jules, I bought you some food." "Oh." Julian flushed and took the box from Eric. "You didn't have to." "For my best friend." Eric kissed Julian's cheek. "Of course I did, honey." He beamed. "Now get dressed. I'm taking you to a game. The rest of the crew hasn't seen you in ages." "Oh." Julian glanced at me and shrugged. "Have fun," I said, pretending I didn't care either way. "Okay, let me get changed and I'll be right out." Julian disappeared, leaving me alone with Eric for the first time. "Hawk, right?" Eric asked. "That's your last name?" "So? Any relation to Lena Hawk?" I stiffened at the mention of my mother's name, and Eric's smile grew. Figured as much. The apple doesn't fall far from the tree." "What do you want?" "What the hell is really going on here?" Eric demanded. "I've known Julian for years. There's no way he'd suddenly decide you were it for him, the poster boy for bad decisions, just a few weeks ago. He couldn't stand you and now you're married." "Maybe you don't know him as well as you think you do," I scoffed. Eric's eyes narrowed. "I know him well enough to know when he's lying." My heart ticked up, but I ignored it. "Well then, talk to him about it." "I heard some interesting rumors about you," Eric continued as if I hadn't spoken. "How you used to rob people for money, how you have a drinking problem that's making your career spiral." "And your point?" Eric's eyes flashed with rage. "If I find out you plan to hurt my friend in any way, I will bury you." "God, you're so pathetic," I scoffed. "You've obviously been in love with him for years. Now that he's moved on, you want to ruin it? Well, save it." Eric's smile chilled me to the bone. "Please, let's not pretend you weren't already half in love with him before all of this began. You're a parasite, Carter. A leech. You aren't good enough to be placed, and now you've latched onto the next best thing." Eric clicked his tongue. "Julian may not be willing to tell me, but I'm sure someone else will, and when they do, you'll be dead in the water." It took everything in me not to smash his face in. I stood there, vibrating with rage. Suddenly the door opened, and Julian appeared. "Ready?" he called to Eric, then kissed me goodbye. "Have a good day." "Bye." Eric waved to me and bile rose in my throat. Julian was going to find out. One way or another, Eric would tell him, and I couldn't let that happen. Eric would tell him, and I couldn't let that happen.
Chapter 6. Julian. "What the hell, Julian?" Eric huffed. I sighed, long and hard, staring at my best friend over a breakfast fruit bowl at Barney's, our favourite brunch spot. I wasn't in the mood for another lecture about Carter or Eric's theories on why marrying him was a mistake. I just wanted a relaxing meal on the terrace, sipping mimosas, basking in the LA sun with my favourite person in the world. Last night with Carter had been incredible. The way he made love to me still sent tingles up and down my spine. "Look," I said as calmly as I possibly could. "I really don't want to talk about this. Where's Sarah and the others?" "I told them not to come," Eric said. My stomach twisted. I speared a piece of melon with my fork, more for something to do than any real appetite. The morning had been warm, golden even, and I had wanted to keep it that way, to pretend just for a little while longer that everything was perfect, that Carter and I were real, that I hadn't just sold my soul for a visa. "Oh," An ambush, then. Real subtle. Anyway, how's work going? I said, desperate to steer us towards safer waters. Eric scoffed, leaning back in his chair, one arm draped lazily over the backrest. I figured we should have some one-on-one time, considering you've been too busy playing house with your new husband. My heart beat in my throat. That's ridiculous. I'll always make time for you. What's ridiculous is you expecting me to believe this is real. He tapped a finger against his mimosa glass, the soft chime cutting through the lazy brunch chatter around us. You hate Carter. You have always hated Carter. And now suddenly you're married to him? His gaze bore into me. I'm not an idiot, Jules. People change. I swallowed hard, pushing my fruit around my plate. Eric let out a sharp laugh. Yeah, and how did this change happen exactly? Did you wake up one morning and think, you know what? That arrogant, self-obsessed bastard who's been my rival for years, he's actually the love of my life. He tilted his head. Or was it something else? You don't know what you're talking about. I forced myself to meet his gaze, even as my pulse thumped against my ribs. I think I do. I gripped my fork tighter, my knuckles aching from the pressure. If he found out, if anyone found out, I was finished. Look, I've gotten to know him and he's not so bad. Not so bad? See, there it is again. The sheer insanity of it. I don't ever think I've ever heard anyone describe their husband as not so bad, he said using air quotations. Eric, is he blackmailing you into this? Eric's voice was sharp, cutting through the lazy hum of brunch chatter around us. The guy's seriously unhinged, or is this just a PR stunt? If so, you need to tell me the truth. I can help you. I know people in the industry who can get you out of this. He leaned forward, his eyes dark with concern. You're one of the best players in the league, Julian. You don't need him. I forced a laugh, but it sounded hollow even to my own ears. You're being dramatic. Am I? His jaw clenched, his fingers tightened around his glass. You're 27. You've won Wimbledon twice, the US Open, and you're the reigning Australian Open champion. And now, out of nowhere, you're married to Carter Hawke. He practically spat the name like it burned his tongue. It doesn't make sense. I exhaled, setting my drink down with too much force. I don't need saving, Eric. Then tell me the truth, he pressed, because none of this makes sense. 2 months ago, you couldn't stand the sight of Carter, and now you're married to him. His eyes searched mine, looking for cracks, for weakness. I know you, Jules, and I know when you're lying. I told you, people change. I reached for my mimosa, but my hand wasn't as steady as I wanted it to be. Not like this. Eric exhaled sharply, shaking his head. Julian, is this about your visa? The air in my lungs turned to stone. My grip on my fork tightened. Eric's lips parted slightly, as if he hadn't meant to say it, but now that the words were out, there was no pulling them back. This is insane. If you need help, just tell me. You don't have to do this. I want this, I said, pushing the words out before the silence could betray me. Eric didn't blink. I don't believe you. A sharp, bitter laugh scraped its way out of my throat. Of course he didn't believe me. He never believed in him, never believed in us. I clenched my jaw, tasting something acrid, something like resentment that had been simmering beneath the surface for far too long. Of course you won't, I bit out, my voice like crushed glass. You never supported me, not once. Eric's expression faltered for a second, but then he smoothed it over, like always. Like he was the one being reasonable, and I was just too much, too angry, too wrong to be taken seriously. Jules, he tried, but I wasn't finished. You talk down to me like I'm too stupid to make my own decisions, like my marriage to Carter was some stupid mistake. I went on, my chest rising and falling too fast, too sharp. Like it's some phase I'll wake up from. Well, newsflash, Eric. I'm wide awake, and you can't stand it, can you? No, I can't, he exploded. You know how I feel about you. You've always known, and to pretend otherwise and just marry him is driving me crazy. I think we're done here. I stood, unable to stomach another word. Maybe we aren't as close as I thought we were. Eric said nothing as I tossed some bills onto the table and left. I walked back to my apartment. My heart a caged bird, wings slamming against bone, desperate to break free. How did he figure everything out so quickly? God, what the hell was Carter going to think when I told him? By the way, my best friend is onto us. What would that even accomplish? I was in a state by the time I got back, stepping into the kitchen to find Carter had tidied up from the pancakes we ate earlier. I rubbed my eyes and rolled my shoulders, wondering what I should do today. I had practice later, and Glenda was supposed to text me about an upcoming match, one she claimed would be very good for my image. A light buzzing sound caught my attention. I glanced at the coffee table and saw Carter's phone vibrating insistently. I went to silence it, but the messages kept popping up like crazy. Call me. It's urgent. Asher left me. How can you ignore your mother like this? I need you. Please. Was this his mother? Crap. I angled my head toward the bedroom, debating what to do. Snooping in Carter's life was wrong, but this was his mother, and clearly, it was urgent. Carter, I called, but there was no answer. He'd probably gone to the court and forgotten his phone. It shrilled again, startling me out of my thoughts. She sounded desperate. Where are you? I can meet you, I texted back. Bring the money for the rent, cash. Please. My brows drew together at the response. Rent money. I knew vaguely that Carter had another apartment. We had gotten married so quickly that there were still things I didn't know about him, but I had no idea he was also paying his mother's rent. Was that something we should talk about? We were married now. How much was Carter even making? From what I knew, most of his sponsors had dropped him, and he'd lost the last competition against me, so there was no way he had enough to cover his own rent and hers. It didn't matter. We were married. I texted her that I would be there and headed out the door. Who are you? A voice said behind me. I flinched, turning on my heel to see a woman in a yellow-stained dress leaning against the wall, staring at me. She sucked a cigarette between her dry, cracked lips, her eyes narrowing in suspicion. Lena, I said, just now remembering Carter's mother's name. I'm Julian, Carter's wife, she chuckled, exposing a row of yellow, cracked teeth. She drawled the word condescendingly. Right, I heard on the news he'd gotten married. To think he didn't even tell me. His mother. I can't believe that crap is still legal. My brows drew together and my frown deepened. What's that supposed to mean? She flicked her cigarette away. Come, let me have a look at you. She stepped closer and I wrinkled my nose at the strong stench of cigarettes and booze. You're that famous tennis player, Julian Belmont, right? Her eyes gleamed wickedly. How much you got? I stepped back. The money for your rent. Oh, I need groceries too. Carter always includes money for that, she said hastily, and for some reason it sounded like a lie. Right. I took out the stack of bills from my pocket and handed it to her. She snatched it, counting quickly before stuffing it into her purse. Thanks, we're family now, so we should be helping each other out when needed. Carter can be stubborn and pig-headed, but I see you're his better half now. The way she said better half sounded more like a sneer. Yeah, well, pleasure to meet you. I'm off then. How did he snag someone like you? She probed. You're pretty. English too. Long lashes and blonde hair. Actually, you're just his type. She laughed, and it made my skin crawl. I assume he didn't tell you much about me or the lies he's been spreading about his own mother. What lies? She threw her head back and laughed. This and that. The worst one was that my boyfriend was inappropriate with him. Lies. All of them filthy lies. Asher would never touch him. Carter is a liar, don't ever forget that. A weasel, that one. He's all bent. It disgusts me, frankly. And I'm his mother. She laughed again, a sharp, brittle sound that sent a shudder through me. But I'll accept him. So when are you going to pop out some grandbabies? I felt sick looking at her. The way she ridiculed and mocked her own son made me realise how much of a mistake it was coming here. Bye. Her cruel laughter followed me all the way back to my apartment, hollowing out my chest. Inappropriate. Jesus, I couldn't even imagine what Carter had been through. When I got back to the flat, Carter was waiting for me, his mouth spread into an infectious grin. His auburn hair was slightly damp from the shower. "Hey," he said, kissing me on the lips. "Where have you been?" "Glenda's been trying to reach you. I didn't even know you had a house line until it started going off like crazy." "Yeah," I forced a smile. "I found your phone." I handed it to him, and Carter smiled, checking it briefly. "Don't tell me brunch with Eric took that long." "No, I came back," I said, stepping around him. "Carter, My phone buzzed and I saw Glenda's name flashing on the screen. I picked it up. "Hello?" "Julian, you half-wit. I've been trying to call you all day." "What's going on?" "They want a rematch. I told you it would work. You and Carter are set to face each other in the Monte Carlo Masters next month." I blinked. The Monte Carlo Masters, one of the biggest clay court tournaments in the world, where only the best of the best competed. "They want us to go head-to-head?" I asked, my stomach twisting. "Are you kidding? The media's eating this up. Your fake marriage is the story of the year, and now they want to see if the reigning champion and the wildcard can bring their rivalry to the court again. This is your chance to remind the world why you're number one." I swallowed hard. It wasn't just about me. Carter needed this match as much as I did. Carter tilted his head, watching me. "What is it?" I met his gaze, gripping the phone tighter. "Looks like we're going to Monte Carlo." "Wow, that's amazing." Carter beamed and I smiled back, tightly. "We have to get you online more. Instagram photos, more pictures together. I want you glued to Carter's side the entire time, kissing and hugging and doing everything you can. This match will be the talk of the century," Glenda exclaimed. She started talking a mile a minute, so I put her on speaker so Carter could hear. The two of them immediately started brainstorming ideas, throwing out ways to market the match, to sell the image of our perfect relationship. I stood there feeling like I was out of my body, the steady whooshing of water filling my ears. The news of the assault had left me feeling like I'd been punched into a brick wall. My gaze fluttered over Carter, taking in his long nose and full lips. He looked just like his mother, almost identical. And to think I'd misjudged him so thoroughly disturbed me. "Take a picture, it'll last longer," he teased before stealing another kiss. I snorted a laugh, my face growing hot. "Yeah. I should have told him about giving his mother the money. I should have told him about meeting her. But I couldn't. I didn't want to burst this little bubble we had created. My feelings for Carter were growing, and maybe, just maybe, in the near future, we wouldn't have to fake it anymore." We arrived at the Monte Carlo tennis tournament, a spectacle so grand that it shimmered in the light like some distant, unattainable dream. Carter, ever the child of this dazzling world, beamed with the kind of joy one might reserve for an artist admiring his first masterpiece. His gaze swept the surroundings, the sun-drenched courts, the elegant insanity of the crowd, the faint echoes of applause that clung to the air like perfume. It was a vision that seemed to promise more than just a game, but a rebirth, a rekindling of something pure and sparkling. Yet for all his exuberance, there was a strange detachment within me, an ache that curled in the corners of my heart, gnawing at the edges of my soul. The luxury of it all, the glint of the grand buildings, the warmth of the Mediterranean breeze, seemed almost too bright, too blinding for my troubled mind. I had made a decision I would regret. Behind Carter's back, I had gone to his mother. She had told me secrets, so raw and so dark that I felt as if I were drowning in a sea of someone else's sorrow. His assault, the cruel truth she spat like venom between gritted teeth, had coloured my perception of him with an unfamiliar shade of fear. Carter was different to me now. I followed him into the hotel, though it felt as though I were walking through a world that was not quite my own. The opulent space greeted us like an old, indifferent lover, polished marble floors reflecting the soft glow of chandeliers, windows that framed the azure sea as if it were a picture too perfect to touch. Everything was too smooth, too clean, as if the ugliness of life had been scrubbed away. And in its place, there was nothing but this hollow beauty. Carter, for his part, was oblivious to the storm that swirled within me. He settled himself on the couch, flipping through a glossy magazine as if he had no care in the world, his fingers tracing the pages with the same ease with which he had once picked up a racket. I stood by the window, my hands pressed against the cool glass, staring out at the horizon, where the sky met the sea, in a way that was both infinite and unreachable. The world was too bright, too sharp, and I couldn't shake the image of his mother's words still echoing in my mind like a phantom whisper. "Everything okay?" Carter asked, but he didn't look up. "Fine, just jet-lagged." It was a lie, but Carter didn't call me out on it. I turned to face him, smiling. "Is there anything you want to do before the tournament?" That caught his attention. Carter looked up, his cool eyes landing on me with enough heat to set me on fire. He stood, walking toward the window, and caged me in by bracing both palms flat against the glass. "Yeah? What did you have in mind, Belmont?" My hands immediately went to the drawstrings of his shorts while Carter brushed his lips over mine, searching, exploring. But the shrill buzz of my phone broke us apart. I glanced down at it and saw that it was Eric. He was waiting for me in the hall. "Bollocks," I muttered. "Eric's outside." Carter rolled his eyes. "If you aren't back in 10 minutes, I'm coming to get you." He pushed away from the window, and I made my way out the door. Sure enough, Eric was there, leaning against the doorframe, dressed in blue jeans and a polo shirt, his arms crossed over his chest. "What are you doing here?" I thought. "Is it true?" "Is what true?" Eric shoved his phone in my face and my stomach plummeted. It was Carter's mother, clearly drunk or high out of her mind, talking to a reporter. "Mrs. Hawke, do you think this is a PR stunt and that Julian and Carter were never married?" "Of course it is," she slurred. "I've never seen that boy in my life. He didn't even introduce himself. That's how I know it isn't real. My son would never marry that uppity prick." "Hey, are you filming this, you little bastard?" There was a scuffle and the phone went dead, but the damage was already done. 5 million views in an hour. Jesus Christ, I almost dropped the phone, staggering back. This was it. I was finished. The US government would find out, and I'd be deported back to England, my entire life in ruins. "Julian," Eric snarled, "is it true?" I stammered, struggling to find words. "It is, isn't it?" Eric hissed, his voice low and accusing. "Holy hell, I knew there was something wrong with this relationship. Last month he was the spawn of Satan, and now you're in love with him." My heart hammered in my chest. I opened my mouth to say something, anything, but nothing came out. "Eric, you're my best friend," I finally forced out. "You always will be. But this, with Carter, it's complicated." I rubbed my face, my hands trembling. "I never meant for it to get this far, but what? Was I just a joke to you? All those years, all those moments we shared, you couldn't have loved me, not even once." His words cut deeper than I expected. I swallowed hard, unsure how to answer him. "I like you, Eric. You mean the world to me. You will always be my best friend. But this, with Carter, I don't know what it is." "Then why the hell are you doing this?" Eric snapped, his voice rising with frustration. "Tell me you don't love him. Tell me this is just a damn game to you." I froze, unable to find the words. Could I say that? Could I even admit it out loud? "I don't know. I don't even know him." The words came out in a rush. "It was just a fake relationship, Eric. I needed to stay in the country. It was never about love. It was just about survival." The second the words left my mouth, the front door opened. Carter stepped out, his face murderous. He'd heard everything. "Julian," Carter growled, "what the hell is going on here?" I felt like the ground was rushing up to meet me. "Carter, I'm sorry. Is what you said true? You were just trying to survive." "No!" I rushed to him, but he stepped back, creating an invisible wall between us. My heart thudded painfully in my chest. Carter, please, it's not like that. Screw you, he spat, spinning on his heel. But before he could take another step, I grabbed his arm, yanking him back to face me. Carter. You spoke to my mom too, he demanded. What the freaking hell, Julian? How could you invade my privacy like that? I didn't mean to. Your phone was out and I just checked it. My voice faltered, and I could see the storm building in his eyes. I should have told you, but I didn't know how to tell you all this. I was trying to make things right, but instead I just made them worse. Carter yanked his arm from my grasp, the coldness in his eyes more cutting than I could handle. You should have told me the truth from the start, Julian. Instead, you're living this lie with me, and now you're just making excuses. His breath came out in sharp bursts. How could you lie to me like this? The words hit harder than anything physical could. I was about to say something else, but he was already turning to leave. Don't walk away from me, I pleaded. Carter, please, let me explain. I never wanted to hurt you. Yeah. You should have thought about that before you dragged me into this mess, he said. Then, without another word, he disappeared through the door, leaving me standing in the hallway. I stayed up all night, pacing the hotel room, my chest tight, feeling like it was stuffed with air, my throat clogged with emotion. I screamed at Eric to leave when he tried to comfort me, his presence only making things worse. Glenda stayed with me as long as she could, trying to reassure me, promising we could spin this into something manageable. But all I wanted was to see Carter, to explain everything, to make him understand what happened. The day of the competition arrived, and still, Carter hadn't returned. I was in the midst of another sleepless night when I heard the sound of shuffling coming from the kitchen. My heart leaped, and I scrambled out of bed. Carter, I called out, my voice hoarse from lack of sleep. The light from the kitchen sliced across the room, and I could see him, packing his things. He looked like he hadn't slept in years. I'm leaving. No, please, let me explain. There's nothing to explain, Julian, he said coldly, his voice clipped. I thought we could work this out, but we can't. I'll see you on the court. Carter, I whispered, touching his arm. He flinched away from me, and my heart broke a little more with each inch of distance between us. Your mother told me some horrible stuff, I continued, my voice trembling. I'm sorry I invaded your privacy, but I'm not sorry that I know more about what happened to you. I don't know what I'm feeling, but I just can't lose you. I don't want to. He turned, eyes sharp with bitterness. Because of your green card, how predictable. No, I nearly shouted, my voice breaking. It has nothing to do with that. I've grown to care for you, and I know you care about me too, I said, wetting my dry lips. Please give me another chance. Carter looked at me, his gaze unreadable, like I was seeing him for the first time. Will you play for it? What? I asked, confused. You heard me, he said, voice colder than ever. A rematch. Winner takes all. The bet? How could I forget? What are the terms? If I win, we're done. I sucked in a sharp breath, the words cutting through me like a scalpel. Tears pricked at the corner of my eyes, but I nodded. Okay, and if I win? Winner takes all, Carter relented, his jaw clenched tight. I stared at him, at the hollow of his throat, the long, smooth column of his neck, his body, the body I had worshipped just days before. The memory of him kissing me deeply, making love to me all night, touched my soul in ways I couldn't explain. All right. Winner takes all, I said, my voice steady, despite the tears threatening to spill. Without another word, I spun on my heels, walking away before I could let the tears fall. Walking away before I could let the tears fall.
Chapter 7. Carter. I blocked my mother's phone call, too furious to form words to speak to her. I shoved my gear into my duffel bag with more force than necessary. The guys in the locker room stared at me, some chuckling and muttering to themselves, but I was too pissed off to care. What the hell possessed Julian to go through my things and meet my mother? He couldn't know she was an addict, that giving her money was like feeding her addiction, but it was far worse than that. I wiped my mouth with the back of my hand, sitting on the bench, my elbows braced on my thighs, trying to gear myself up for the game. I wanted out. Julian and I could divorce within a year. During that time, I could spend it touring, not living together. Or occasionally, I could drop in to make it look like we were still a couple. "Carter?" a voice called. "What?" I snapped. The guy stared at me. "There's someone named Trina waiting outside for you." I marched out the door and saw Trina standing there, arms crossed, her brown skin almost golden in the light, her expression one of resignation. "So, you managed to screw it up in less than a week," she said. "Hello to you too." I stared down at her. "What do you want?" "I thought you fired me." She shrugged. "You're rehired." "Convenient," I scoffed. "Look, it's over." "It's not over, it's far from over." Trina walked over to me and shook her head. "I didn't think you would give up so easily." "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means exactly that. Don't you want to fight for what you want? It's obvious you have feelings for him." I stiffened, heat flooding my face. I had no idea when these feelings started to develop, but they must have been around the time we had our first kiss. "What does it matter anyway?" "It matters because you matter," she said softly, her tone firm yet gentle. I looked away, unwilling to meet her eyes, but her words hit me harder than I'd expected. "You're playing the game, Carter. You've got all the tools you need to win, but you've got to use them. Don't let pride or fear dictate your moves. You've got to stay in control, even when it feels like you're losing everything. Fight for what you want, even when it's hard." I didn't know what to say. She was right, but admitting it meant facing the truth, and that was something I wasn't ready for. "You can keep pretending it's all just business, but deep down, you know it's not. You're in this, whether you like it or not," Trina added, her gaze piercing through me. "So stop running from it. Fight for it, Carter, or you'll regret it." I met her eyes for the first time since she'd spoken. For the first time in what felt like forever, I realized she might be right. But what was I fighting for? What could I possibly salvage from this mess, this tangle of desires and truths? Julian, would he still consider me after everything he'd learned, after everything I'd failed to conceal? I scoffed bitterly, leaning away from Trina's expectant gaze. "I've got to go," I muttered. Trina nodded silently, her fingers brushing against my arm, a fleeting touch full of unspoken encouragement. "Knock 'em dead." I didn't answer. My thoughts were too messy, too tangled. Instead, I turned and walked toward the court. My heart pounded in time with my footsteps. The court stretched out before me, empty and unforgiving. This was where battles were fought, where sweat and effort decided everything. Above me, the sky was a perfect, cloudless blue. It felt too calm, too still, like it had no idea what was happening inside me. I bent down and stretched, my muscles pulling in ways they had done 1,000 times before. My body knew what to do. It moved without thinking. But my mind was somewhere else, lost in everything I couldn't seem to push away. And then, in the corner of my eye, I saw him. Julian. His blonde hair were silken strands of gold in the sunlight. He stood on the sidelines looking so out of place, like a figure cast into a world that was too harsh for him. My chest tightened, a subtle ache, a restless kind of longing that I hated myself for. But then, he was there. Eric. He jogged toward Julian with the grace of someone who owned the world. His hands reached up, brushing a few strands of Julian's hair away from his face, the intimacy in the gesture stabbing into my chest like a foreign object lodged in my ribs. Jealousy exploded within me, violent and raw, tearing through every nerve ending, sending a tremor down my spine. My grip on the racket tightened until my knuckles turned white. And still, the rage, the helplessness, the resentment twisted inside me. And then, as swiftly as the moment had come, Eric pulled away. It was done. Over. Fine, I thought, my stomach sinking. I guess we're done. I didn't care anymore. I would pay for this, pay for everything, for every mistake I had made, and I would win. I would win it all, and then it would be over. The game, the marriage. Everything between Julian and me would fall away like dust, like something that had never mattered at all. And maybe, in that cruel finality, I could finally breathe. The referee stood at the net, clipboard in hand. "All right, boys, keep it clean. Best of 3 sets. No tiebreakers. Play fair." Julian rolled his shoulders, stretching his arms. "Ready, Carter?" I spun my racket once, gripping it tight. "Always." The referee nodded. "Rematch play." I smashed my racket against the ball. It shot over the net fast and low. Julian lunged, barely catching it. The sharp thwack of his return reverberated in my ears. I ran, my shoes screeching against the court. The scent of sweat and sun-baked asphalt filled my nose. I swung hard. The ball cracked against my racket, flying past Julian. He darted after it, his breath ragged, his muscles straining. I watched every movement. The flex of his arms, the sweat dripping down his temple, the way his chest heaved. Focus. Julian served and it shot out like a bullet. It skimmed the net, twisting in the air. I dove, my body slamming into the ground as I barely got my racket under it. Pain shot through my wrist. The ball soared back. Julian was there, waiting. He smashed it past me, his eyes burning. I tasted salt. My pulse roared. We weren't just playing, we were fighting, and I was winning. The score was 7-6. Sweat dripped from Julian's brow, his face flushed, skin slick with effort. His muscles trembled, the strain visible in every movement. He was pushing himself, trying to win, but I could see it in his eyes. He wasn't playing to win anymore, not really. He was playing to lose. The ball flew past me. I swung, missing it by an inch. The crowd murmured, a ripple of disbelief spreading. I clenched my jaw. Not yet. Another point, another rally. Julian's hands shook. He could barely hold onto the racket. His legs were unsteady. He wasn't just tired. He was broken. I could feel the pull. His gaze, desperate, pleading. Please. But I couldn't. I couldn't let him win this. He returned the ball, barely making it over the net. The rally lasted mere seconds, both of us scrambling, desperate to outlast the other. But then, Julian's foot slipped. He faltered. And the ball, the last one, came flying toward him. Julian didn't swing. I felt as if time slowed. The ball sailed past him. A perfect miss. I stared at him, the hollow ache expanding in my chest. The match was over, and he had let me win. I wanted to scream. My throat burned. Why? Why had he done it? Why had he thrown the match? The crowd roared, but it was distant, muffled. The world was spinning too fast, the shock in my chest too heavy. I wanted to tear my hair out, rip apart the court, break every racket in sight. I'd won, but at what cost? I looked at Julian, standing across from me, his face ashen. He didn't even look at me. His shoulders slumped, the weight of what we'd done, what we hadn't done, settling in. I wanted to run to him, but what good would that do? He let me win, and now we were both broken. I fled. My heart, a bruised and battered thing, pounded with violent urgency, every step away from that cursed court a bitter attempt to outrun the taste of failure clinging to my lips. Barely able to hear Julian's voice calling my name. No, it wasn't his voice, not truly. It was the sound of my own shame, reverberating inside my skull. The harsh slap of my feet against the unforgiving concrete seemed the only real thing in that moment, as if I were running toward some escape I could never reach. I jumped into my rental car, my hands shaking as I gripped the wheel, the world blurring beyond the glass like some distorted painting of fleeting despair. The hum of the engine was a hollow comfort, but it did nothing to quiet the storm in my chest, nothing to stop the tears from streaming down my face like a sudden, uncontrolled downpour. Worthless. A mistake, a failure. My mother's words, the venom she spit at me, clawed their way through my mind like stones, jagged and unrelenting. The insults sank deeper into my bones until there was nothing left but the suffocating weight of her voice. I'm a mistake. And Julian. Julian had given me the greatest gift, had played his part in a tragedy neither of us wanted. And now, here I was, nothing but the remnants of my own inadequacy. He had regretted it, regretted me, so much that he had let me win, so much that he had cast aside his own pride, his own desire. For what? For me. The thought of it twisted my gut into a knot. I was a fool, a coward, a mistake. It was as though everything I had ever feared had converged at once, slamming against my skull in a violent, unbearable wave of doubt and self-loathing. In the frenzy of it all, I wasn't even aware of the change. My hands had turned the wheel, the tires screamed against the pavement, and my mind, a blur of grief, failed to register the shift. I had slipped onto the wrong side of the road. The massive 18-wheeler came at me like a beast with 1,000 eyes, its horn a deafening blast in the night. My breath caught in my throat as I jerked the wheel, desperate to escape the roaring, uncaring juggernaut that loomed ever closer. In my panic, my heart thundering in my chest, I veered too sharply, my vision spinning. The car lurched, a sudden crunch, a sickening twist, and then the world exploded in fire and splinters. A tree. It was an absurd collision, the way the car snapped against the bark, as though nature itself had decided I could not be left to the whims of my own mind. The impact was violent, yet there was a strange, distorted clarity in that moment. The sound of shattering glass, the dull thud as the air rushed from my lungs, leaving me gasping. My mouth was flooded with blood, the taste metallic, familiar in its cruelty. I felt it, every inch of my body screaming in pain, my limbs caught in some unnatural position, as though I had become part of the wreckage. The noise was a distant hum now, an afterthought in the midst of my vision, which flickered like the last flicker of a dying flame. The darkness began to creep in, taking its time, but it was inevitable. And then, amidst it all, a voice, Julian's voice, soft and distant, a whisper, his words slipping into my ear, impossible to hold on to. He was there somehow. His warmth, his anger, his presence, it all melted into the world around me, my heartbeat slowing before they succumbed to the storm. I couldn't hear him anymore. I couldn't hold on. The world went black, and then nothing. I awoke slowly, the sterile scent of antiseptic, and the faint hum of machines pulling me from the deep void. My limbs felt heavy, as though some unseen force had placed an immense weight on my chest. I groaned, a low sound of confusion and discomfort, my body yearning to break free from the haze of unconsciousness. Then the warmth of a touch. A presence so intimate, so consuming that it cut through the fog of my mind. I turned my head, blinking through the light that pooled in the room, and saw him. Julian, his face drawn with fear, streaked with tears, a softness in his eyes but also an urgency, a desperation. Carter. His voice broke through, trembling, and in that moment I felt my heart thunder in response, as if to answer his desperate cry. Before I could speak, his lips were upon mine, rough, eager, as if he feared that if he did not kiss me, I would slip through his fingers like water through a sieve. His kiss was everything, fire, need, relief. I returned it trembling, my body still weak, yet somehow finding strength in the press of his mouth, in the warmth of his touch. His hands cupped my face, as if to ensure I was truly here, truly alive. "You're okay. God, you're okay," he breathed, his words quaking against my skin. I pulled back slightly, my breath shallow, my mind still reeling. "What happened?" I asked, my voice hoarse, as though I had been lost for an eternity. Julian sat back, his eyes never leaving mine. "You started driving on the wrong side of the road," he explained, his voice thick with guilt and concern. "I tried to catch up, but then you swerved." I turned my head slightly, feeling the weight of my own confusion. "Am I?" I trailed off, feeling the sharp pangs of pain as my fingers brushed over my body, over the cuts and bruises. Nothing too severe, just the evidence of a collision, the remnants of a life I had nearly lost. "A severe concussion," Julian said, his voice tight with emotion. "But thankfully, nobody was hurt. I winced, the guilt crashing over me like a torrent. I'm sorry. I should have. I don't care, Julian interrupted, his hands trembling as they cupped my face once more. I'm just glad you're okay. His gaze held mine, a depth of emotion in his eyes that I hadn't seen before. A frantic energy, a tenderness that made my chest ache. It was as though the world had been torn apart between us. But now, in this moment, we were connected by something raw, something unspoken, something powerful. I opened my mouth, about to speak, to tell him the things I had held in, but before I could, the door creaked open. Mr. Hawk? The doctor asked, his Norwegian accent thick, his gaze flicking briefly to Julian, before settling on me with practiced professionalism. Yes? You've suffered a mild concussion, the doctor said as he moved closer, his hands efficient and sure as they checked my vitals, and some sprained wrists. But thankfully, there is no lasting damage. With rest and care, you should be fine within a week. He finished his examination. He gave me instructions in measured tones and exited, leaving Julian and I alone in the sterile quiet. There was an awkward silence, the kind that only exists between two people who have shared too much, felt too much, yet remain too uncertain to speak the words that truly matter. The silence between us stretched, long and heavy, like a thread pulled too tight. Would he say it? Would I? Did you throw the match? Julian chewed on his bottom lip, his eyes darting away, but he remained silent. But I refused to look away. I needed an answer. Julian. I never felt this way before. I don't know what it is. Something like love, maybe? I don't know, but I do know that I don't want to give it up. You're worth it to me, Carter. I mean it. I relented, my hands reaching for his. Then, you understand my feelings for you? Yes, Julian said quietly. I think, maybe I always knew, but I let toxic people get inside my head. That won't happen again. Not now, not ever. And Eric? What about him? Julian didn't flinch. His jaw clenched, his eyes intense. I told him that unless he can accept you as my husband, we can't be friends anymore. For a moment, I just stared at him. The enormity of it, the commitment in that one action, left me breathless. I surged forward, unable to hold back any longer, and kissed him, hard, deep, with everything I had in me. Julian kissed me back with equal force, his hands reaching for me, trying to climb onto the bed. But then I winced, pain searing through my body. I pulled back, gasping, my hand instinctively pressing against my chest. Julian laughed, a low, soft sound that made my heart race. Sorry, he said, still chuckling. I grinned, even as I caught my breath. It's fine, I breathed, my fingers brushing across his. I love you. His gaze softened, and he chuckled again, a little embarrassed. And I think I love you too, Julian said, his words a bit awkward but sincere. That sounded a lot better in my head. I let out a small laugh, shaking my head. It's fine. We have time. Besides, I added, we definitely need a rematch. What are we playing for this time? I thought about the question, my mouth curling into a smile. Whose last name to take, Hawk or Belmont? If you win, I'll change my last name to Belmont. And if you win? You can change your name to Hawk. How does that sound? Julian Hawk. It sounds awful, like my nightmare is having a nightmare. Whatever. You better be ready for it, Carter. Winner takes all, and I play to win. Fine. Winner takes all. The end. The end.